we'll give you a second or two to do that, then we'll jump into it.
Stand up a little bit before anyway.
This conference will now be recorded.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bryan County Commission meeting, May 3rd. Public comments here to start with. Do we have anybody up there that's, we have nobody in the building, so we're in the room. Don't see any on there, so go ahead and post them if you have some so we can see them, and then we'll take care of them later. Moving on to agenda approval, and I've heard that we need to put County Lake update or something on an item, is that correct?
Yes, I'd like to just update purchasing procedures at the county lake for supplies.
Okay.
The initial inventory gets started.
Okay, we're still having sound issues.
Remember what it was last time?
She had to switch it over to her computer to make it work. So something with the board.
Do you have anything for us, Brad, personnel performance, executive session?
Yep.
No.
Well, can we put that, add that to the agenda
Yeah.
for 5 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got two agenda additions here, the County Lake update.
How long you need, 5 minutes?
Probably 10 or.
Yeah.
Brad's over here.
Yours is not an executive session.
No.
No.
Okay.
No, mine's just
And then-
public comment.
Have County Lake update,
Yes.
then, let's see,
Comment.
we'll do it after Sharon, before the commission comments.
Sharing
County Lake.
ideas. Opinions, that's what I need.
Okay, can I have someone respond if you have sound, if you can hear now?
And an executive session for 5 minutes, Ken.
Yes.
Working.
Okay, testing. Okay, does somebody hear me now? Yes, okay, yep, I muted them. Okay, I don't know what that was, but. Okay, I think we have that little thing fixed.
Got that little-
So, I'm sorry, agenda changes, you
Yeah,
have.
I'm gonna add, after planning and zoning's done.
He
Sharon's
said no.
done, have
Travis
county-
said no now. He said yes till he said no.
What?
Yes, and then he said no.
Okay,
So, I'll have County Lake, that'll take 10 minutes, and then executive session for 5 minutes for personnel performance. And with those two additions, that'll be, like I said, planning and then commission comments at the end. Tina, I'm gonna come back to you to administrative business.
okay. Okay. Yeah.
Can you hear now?
All right, what about now?
Are we switching it?
Okay.
Turn it off and back on.
It went into the webcam,
Here
and
comes
I'm gonna
your-
try to
you
go
got a-
back.
You got something?
Yeah, they can hear me through the webcam,
Oh.
which is that tiny little microphone.
Oh, okay.
But through the sound system, Okay, what about now?
Yeah.
Okay, what about now? No.
Yeah.
Well,
As soon as the sound system goes into play.
okay,
All I
I'm sorry about that. It's,
All one
well,
place, just see it there.
okay, this is the webcam, this one's the microphone. Okay. What about now? No.
Don't work.
Okay, so we may just have to use the computer sound. I'm sorry. I don't know what the deal is. I changed it to a different port today because thinking that was the issue from last time. And it doesn't seem to be, so. Okay. I'll make one change, another change.
I was just see if I can come back. I'll get no feedback.
Okay. We're gonna try going through that webcam sound. Now we're getting. Okay, Travis, can you hear us now? Can you hear us now? Yes, okay. Oh, goodness. All right, we're gonna go with that. I'm
Okay.
so sorry.
It's all right, it's okay. I'll ask you a question in the commission.
Oh, now he said had us for a second. Okay, well.
My mic if you want.
Okay, but I don't know that that's gonna help.
Let's see if it gets. Echo.
I'm gonna turn it on. My computer so is on now.
There it goes.
Yeah, you'll have to turn yours up. And our camera will join too.
Camera went away.
Okay,
Yeah.
I wonder if I should just try to restart. Okay, can you hear now? Yes, okay, we'll just do it through here. Make sure that when you speak as loud as you can to your microphone, so the speaker over there will pull in.
You just turned on.
It is.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone.
That's all right.
Okay, I really have very little administrative business, so that's a good thing,
Yeah.
since we had sound issues.
Okay.
I do have a COVID update from Wanda. As of 7:30 a.m., Marion County has 688 confirmed PCR cases, 386 probable. There's 17 active, 0 hospitalizations, 24 vital statistic confirmed deaths. Marion County's rolling 14-day positivity rate is 14% through the 24th of April, with 20 positive out of 143 PCR tests. Last week's vaccination clinics, Moderna, 117 booster and 10 prime doses were administered. The health department received a limited supply of Pfizer vaccine, which was administered to 21 high school students. On Monday, April 26th, KDHE authorized Kansas vaccine providers to resume administering the Johnson & Johnson vaccine after it was paused on April 13th. There were 5 doses of Johnson & Johnson administered last week. This week's vaccine clinic will be at the Lake Hall on May 4th with approximately 40 Moderna booster doses. The online scheduler for Moderna remains open for appointments from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. on May 4th and May 11th. For afternoon appointments on May 4th and May 11th, please call the health department to schedule.
Just a little bit further than that, have you heard anything from Evie? Is everything okay with Evie? Have anybody heard him?
We have not been in contact with
Okay.
Deirdre.
Just noticed that, Melania.
Yeah, I saw. That's awesome. Okay, there's the camera back. Oh my goodness. Okay,
Still don't have a camera on
you what? Oh, I turned it off. Now it's back on. There we go.
Alright.
Now the camera's working again. Sorry, this doesn't feel like a good sign for the day. Okay, so besides the COVID update, I do have the minutes of April 30th.
Everybody,
To approve the minutes of May 3rd.
okay, motion by Dave Mueller, second by Jonah to approve the minutes of May the 30th?
April.
April 30th, yeah, there we go. Last month.
Yep.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
5-0.
Okay, that is done. Okay, in your packet, you had a resolution for the cost share program for noxious weeds. And in the past few years, we've done a program of cost share for $5,000. And Josh had asked me to submit this for approval today.
Okay.
So this would be resolution 2021-12. And then we would need to determine what amount you want that program to be for this year and insert that.
Is that amount you used up last year, do you know?
I'm sorry, I don't know. And we could put this on the next meeting probably if you want to.
Well, I just making sure that we put enough in there if it's viable.
I'd suggest going ahead with the resolution because it's high demand time.
Yeah.
But, in fact,
I don't think we've changed it for several years, what I
I can't
remember,
remember changing
the
it.
amount that we contribute to the
So it's
cost.
been pretty consistent at 5,000.
But, you know, the department head hadn't been in since not enough, so.
Yeah, so that would be the indicator, really.
He can always come back and ask for more later, can
I would go ahead and make a motion to approve 2021-12 in the amount of $5,000.
Second.
Have a motion for to pass resolution 2021-12 for the amount of $5,000 for the cost share certificate program within Marion County. We have a second by Kent. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Unanimous, 5-0.
Okay, and I will bring that in here for you to sign shortly.
Okay.
And I think that's it. It was a very short packet there.
And Melena's not?
Melena's on,
She's
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Hold on one second. Let's see if I can.
Was there any, if it's at 12:50, should we wait for any department heads to come in or anything?
I don't think you would need to.
Okay.
Okay, Melena, can you hear us?
She's got multiple.
Yeah, she.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we
Great.
can.
Sorry about that. I have been having technical difficulties here.
Uh-oh. Well, you're not alone. We have had technical difficulties today too, so.
Okay, sounds
You're,
good.
you're not very clear on your sound.
Actually, I'm not on my cell. I'm on my computer. I was not able to unmute on my cell phone. Is it breaking up?
No, you just sound kind of far away.
Sound like you're in a tunnel.
Oh, okay. Maybe what I'll try to do is.
Get closer.
She dialed on with her phone, did she say?
That's what she said, yeah.
If you want to try calling back in, I can see if I can unmute you, if that's easier.
Sure. Let me just mute here so we don't get any background noise. Okay, hang tight.
Okay, sounds good. Hey, Jerry, would you mind going to the clerk's side and finding that cost right share resolution and printing it, or printing it out of the commissioner's packet? Okay.
That's just-
Okay, I see a caller here.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Excellent. This is Melena.
There you go.
that's a little bit better. It's still a little bit quiet, Melina.
Okay. Well, I'll try to talk loud, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Is everybody ready?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Melina.
Excellent. Good afternoon, everybody. Tina, do you happen to have the PowerPoint presentation?
I do. Shall I go ahead and put that up?
Yep, you may as well go ahead and pull it up because that will be our talking discussion here today. And then I'm sure that the commissioners probably have some questions. I'm also going on the assumption that the brief report that we have provided what was submitted to you. You've had a couple of days at least to look that over. So if you have any questions, we'll talk through those. Now, I'm going to have Tina just kind of advance the screens here for me as we discuss. So while she's getting that set up, I just want to take a step back and go back to February of 2021, which was when we first re-discussed the compensation system for the county. And there was a question of whether or not the county was ready to advance with the recommendations from 2018. And if this is something that you are going to consider, it has been 3 years. And so is it possible that the numbers that you see or the salary ranges that you see are out of date? And so what we agreed to do with the county was to approach the comparables that were used in the 2018 study to update those salary ranges based on a cost of living adjustment that has been occurring throughout the market with those comparables. And so if you could just maybe advance to the next screen. There we go. So our objectives of the study, again, then was to get the cost of living adjustment for the years of 2019, 20, and 21. And then also to take a look at any new positions that might have been brought into the county or positions that have substantively changed. Since 2018, there were just a handful of them. And to get an updated salary schedule and an updated costing so that if the county is going to consider implementation at this point, what is that cost going to be for you? I do want to say that in addition to the new positions or anything that has significantly changed, I did take a peek at a couple of other positions just to make sure that I was comfortable with their placement. And those are all wrapped up in the recommendations that are provided in the report, which has the recommended salary schedule. Tina, if you can advance. So what we did, I asked the county clerk's office for your current data so I can see where your employees are at this time, in addition to any new or revised job descriptions that I would need. I also did have some conversations with a limited number of directors. Those discussions were very specific to positions that that either are new or changed, or I just wanted to make sure that I was comfortable with their placement, and those conversations were ones that I had determined we needed. There were also a handful of positions that I asked to complete a position questionnaire, and if you remember from the 2018 study, the position questionnaire gives us much more information about the responsibilities of the position than, say, a job description would, and that gives me a little bit more expansive look at the responsibilities so that I can see internally how does it relate within the organization. And so there were a handful of positions that we asked to complete that as well. And then last but not least, I went out to the comparables, and we started with the original 16 comparables that we had in the original study. We did not pursue anyone that did not participate, but we remained simply with the 16 that participated in the first study. And we asked them for what types of adjustments they offered in the last 3 years, including 2021. If you want to advance to the next slide. And here's what we found. And this was actually a little bit surprising to both Dr. McGrath and I, that especially what was happening for 2021. We did not really expect to see much adjustment, but what you're seeing here is, on average, the adjustments that those 16 comparables did to their salary schedules, and there are going to be a couple of exceptions that I'll talk about here in a moment. So when you add all of those up, you get to 4.73% adjustments over the course of the last 3 years. Now, when you compound those adjustments, it actually ends up being 5.25%, 5.26. And what I mean by that is, when you add 1.57 to a rate, and then you add an extra 2% and an extra 1.16, it doesn't actually result in 473. It compounds. It adds a little bit more. So your range that we were working with in determining where we felt a reasonable percentage was between 4.75% and 5.26%. Can you just advance, maybe click again? There we go, one more. There we go. So what we also have to exclude some data. And in the last 3 years, there have been some changes in your market. You have had at least one of your comparables that had a compensation study, and they did an implementation, which means it was a reset of their plan, similar to what this would be. And so because of that, those adjustments, those salary adjustments, they're going to be all over the board. And so we just simply excluded that organization's data. We also excluded any organization that said that they did not do any kind of a cost of living adjustment, but they relied solely on merit. And that's because those percentages then are going to vary based upon the performance of that specific group of employees, and so those were also excluded. The other part that we excluded was what we call flat rate adjustments, and you had a handful of your comparables over the last couple of years that have offered a flat cent per hour adjustment onto their salary schedule. Now that is something that we see in the market. It does happen, but when you do a flat rate adjustment, what we tend to want to do is take a look at where all of the incumbents were earning and what that flat rate adjustment, what that turns into on a percentage basis. And if you have when you do flat rate, so the employees that are receiving, or they have lower hourly rates, that flat rate will give them a higher percentage increase, and the individuals that are on the upper part of the salary schedule, that flat rate will result in a lower percentage. And what happens when you do flat rate adjustments, you start to compress your own salary schedule if you do it too many times. And then suddenly you'll have positions that are kind of pancakes on top of each other, and there's not enough separation. And when that happens, you have situations where a supervisor does not necessarily want, or an employee does not want to take a supervisory role in their department because there's not enough separation of wages, and they're going to end up perhaps losing out on overtime, and so it's not necessarily a fiscally smart decision for them to become a supervisor. And those flat rate adjustments will do that overall to a salary schedule over a period of time. What we ended up doing was taking a look at what that flat rate percentage did to those organizations, and those flat rate percentages ended up being an overall average of about 4% to that organization. And so what happened was then it's going to cause a spike in your overall averaging. If we had included those flat rates, I would have had to have added an additional 0.5% from what you're seeing on the screen. And I just did not feel that that was prudent, just simply because that organization needed to do flat cents per hour for a very specific reason. But I did not feel that that was not necessarily what the overwhelming majority of your comparable market was doing, so they were eliminated. So overall, then, what we ended up having, again, was once we excluded that, you've got 4 3/4 up to 5.25% of what that salary schedule should be adjusted. We determined that our recommendation was going to be on the low end of that, knowing that the county is, fiscally conservative, and we have to be considerate of what this implementation cost is going to be for you. So our recommendation at this point is 4.73% onto the 2018 schedule, and what you are seeing in that final report is that adjustment. We have actually already adjusted that salary schedule, and the costing that you're going to see includes that. Now, you might be concerned that, in essence, you're a half a percent on average behind your market, and that is indeed the case. You would be a little bit behind, but there may be an opportunity for the county at some point in the future to perhaps play catch up a little bit more. But for the purposes of the implementation, we're comfortable with 473, and then the county can determine if there's anything that they need to do, in the years to come. But we really do need to focus on what your implementation costs are going to be at this time. Go ahead and, there you go. So when I did the costing, and you're going to see that in the next slide, you're going to see that there's a pretty hefty number with an immediate implementation. If we were to do everything at once, it's going to be somewhere in the ballpark of about $170,000, $171,000. We'll talk about that when we get to the next slide. But because of that, then I went back and I took a look at the implementation strategies that we identified back in 2018 and determined that, yes, indeed, you might need to have that option available to you again. And so I have given you 2 options for you to initially take a look at. The first one, and I'm sorry that they're backwards, I want to talk about the 1-lane implementation, which is on the right-hand side of the screen. You will see that you've got a pay grade A, and that is in a yellowish color, and then there's a T, we call it a T lane, which is in green, and that says $11.47 an hour, and then you'll have step 1, which is $12.04 an hour. Our recommendation on the salary schedule is in yellow, and so that would mean that pay grade A, our recommendation is that pay range is $12.04 an hour. But because it's going to cost you a significant dollar amount, and you may or may not have the financial ability to do that all at once, we're going to back off that step 1 and create what's called a temporary step, and that's what you see in green. So the temporary step with a 1-lane implementation would be $11.47 an hour for this particular example, which means that if your employees are under that, their position is slotted for grade A, they are under $11.47 an hour, they would be placed at $11.47, not necessarily $12.04. We would move them to $12.04 the following year. And you would see then also that the difference between those two steps is 5%. It's a very aggressive schedule because we don't want your employees to be in the green zone longer than they need to be. We would consider those wages to be lower than what would be competitive for you for your recruitment and retention purposes. So it's purely an implementation strategy for you. Whether or not you can afford to do this with a 1-lane or a 2-year implementation, then let's take a look at on the left side of the screen with the 2-lane implementation. It's the same pay grade. Look at pay grade A in that yellow, it's $12.04 an hour, but you'll see that we have 2 green zones, 2 green lanes, and that will give the employees who are under that minimum an additional year to get into that yellow area, which is what our true recommendations are. The first step is a 4% adjustment from T2 up to T1. It's 4%, and then it's a 3% adjustment to get onto the salary schedule. So again, it's aggressive, but it is not as aggressive as the 1-lane or the full implementation. And so this gives you an idea of the various options that you have, how aggressive we're going to be. So if you could move on to the next screen. You should have received a summary, a costing summary, and this is the costing summary to show you what the options are, and you can compare them from left to right. In gray, that is a full implementation. If the county does not consider a temporary, the temporary green steps that were in the previous slide, you can do a full implementation at about just shy of $172,000 a year. Now that is for a full calendar year. So if you were going to consider a mid-year implementation, say in July of this year, it would be somewhere just shy of about $86,000. Everyone goes at least on to step 1. They might be higher up based upon what their current hourly rate is. And how we place employees is we place them on the step closest to what they're earning without a decrease. For some people, that means they might be only adjusting 1 penny, but for some others, it might mean a significantly more dollar amount, especially if they were under that minimum and we're trying to build that wage up. So that's your first option. Your second option is if you wanted to use one of the temporary lanes, and that will give you a 2-year implementation. And what you're seeing here is if you were to do 2021 and 22. So in 2021, and again, I would be looking at probably a mid-year since we're already into May. A mid-year implementation would be somewhere around $59,000, and then the rest would occur in 2022. Now, knowing, however, that you have to carry that new base forward, which means for 2022, your full year cost is $114,000 plus the $118,000 that you're carrying over from the year before. Now, you might be asking, why is that more than the full implementation? And what you're seeing in here is that the employees are all still stepping. So this is not just employees that are in the temporary green zone. This is all employees going forward into the new year that would be getting a step increase. So if the county decided they did not want all of the employees to get a step increase, as an example, perhaps you're going to say only the people that are in the temporary zone get a step increase because we want to try to get them onto the regular salary schedule. You'll also see that we have another line there that says 1%, and that cost is about $43,000. We would recommend that you put at least a 1% cost of living onto the salary schedule in 2022. So if employees are not going to have a step increase in 22, they can at least still get a 1% salary adjustment, and that's going to work to help keep those salary ranges competitive with the market. As just a note, you will have under the 1 lane temporary, you have 40 employees that would be part of that temporary program that we need to get them advanced through. The last one then is your 2 temporary lanes, which means that this is over the course of 3 years. It's spread out, and you can see your full year and your partial year implementation. Most certainly, there are many organizations that decide that they go mid-year with their increases or their adjustments because it's a half of year cost, even though they have the full list. And I'll let you just take a look at the numbers for yourselves. You can see then the number of employees that would be going through that temporary lane program. We're going to have a few more at the onset, and it's going to take us a little bit longer to get them through those temporary lanes. But the expectation is once everyone's through that those temporary lanes fall away from your salary schedule and you don't see them anymore, nor do you use them, because they're just a little bit too low for you to be competitive. All right, the last thing I want to show you, and then I'm sure that you're going to have questions, is your demographics. And this was really just for my own purposes to see how your trend internally has changed, if it has changed at all. We like to measure what's going on in an organization that helps us understand the bigger picture. And what this is information about your employees from 2018, which is on the first line, and then 2021 is on the lower part of the salary schedule. And you'll see that the trends themselves, they look very similar. You have similar patterns. But when you take a little bit of a closer look, what you'll see is that from 2018 to 2021, you've lost a little bit of ground in your tenure. Your employees were staying with the county on average 8.74 years in 2018, but now in 2021, the average tenure now is only about 7.61 years, which means you've lost some people that have been with the organization for a while, that whether that's resignation or retirement, and so that number drops. And we want to be able to see a high tenure number because that means that you have good retention with the county. So I can't really say, because we've got a data point from 18 and another data point from 21. I think it's maybe a little bit too early to tell what your trend is. I would recommend that you do this again here in the next year or so to see what your trend is, but I would watch that relatively closely. More importantly, though, is the age of your employees. And what has happened is ever so slightly, you have lost a little bit of ground with the younger generation and you've gained ground with the older generation, which is very good in some cases because there is a dedication to the organization that you sometimes don't necessarily see in some of the younger generations. But this is also the generation that's going to be retiring. And if you can't keep personnel there for a period of time, what's going to happen is the county is going to be expending dollars because you're going to be continuously recruiting and you're going to have turnover and you're going to become the training ground for another organization. So, sometimes financially that's what an organization has to do. I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing. You just need to understand that that's the demographic, or that's what is, could very well happen in the future years. So you're going to want to monitor your demographics to see how this is adjusting over the next couple of years. All right, so I think the next thing is to turn it over with questions that the commission might have.
I'd like to turn it over to the board here. Anybody want to start off with a question? I hear no questions.
I asked on mine in 2018.
Oh, you asked yours in 2018. Yeah, you did.
Dave has questions. I know he does.
Well, I guess that's back to the study. I have questions on why the plan wasn't implemented in 2018. But I guess I'm gonna go more toward Tina. Have you had a chance to review her specific steps and
Yes.
your input?
So part of the process was, that we did go through the schedules together, and, I did have some questions, and there were some things that I weren't necessarily where I felt they should be. But then there was some additional work done, there were a few things that were adjusted, and then there were some things that, she just had that Melina really had a good reason, market-wise, and also, internal equity-wise, as far as they were placed the way that they were. And so overall, I feel like it's a workable plan, and, so I did have input in being able to review that information.
That's why I come back to question you, is you see all these things on a daily basis, you know, responsibilities that have changed. So you've worked with her to address those changes, and they're
Yes,
comfortable.
and any positions that I was questioning, she even went a little bit over what they committed to, as far as going ahead and meeting with those department heads, looking at additional position questionnaires that maybe we weren't going to do right now, but that was done, and then she further evaluated those things, so, I mean.
The methodology and the work she's done, I'm comfortable with, so I guess I don't have specific questions for her, but I'm directing them more toward
Right.
Tina, because Tina obviously
Like I
deals
said,
with
that
these.
no plan is gonna make everyone happy.
Right. Right.
But I think it's I really feel like the push was to be fair, and also to make sure that, Marion County becomes more competitive in the market, because I don't know how any of, how things are going for any of you in your business lives, but I can tell you it's been very difficult hiring here
Yes.
recently, very difficult.
Yes, the newspapers are full of help wanted,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and they don't
Yeah.
look like they're changing.
Melina,
Yes,
I have one question on the temporary lane and 2-year implementation. The 2021 additional cost would be 118, if I understood you right. And then again in 2022, we'd already have to cover that 118 plus an additional 114 to go in that order. Did I understand you correctly?
you did understand that correctly, and please just know that what that cost includes is employees that are in the standard part of the step schedule, and they are also stepping. So if you are looking, let's just say, for example, that you wanted to accelerate your people in the temporary lanes only, and not allow the other employees to step, just simply because, you're putting significant dollars into the implementation, that number that you see on the screen would go down.
Okay.
And I think the idea behind the plan itself is that each year, with proper performance, that everyone does step each year. Isn't that right, Melina? That's the way it's developed.
That is correct. That's how it has been designed, that with adequate performance, then the employees will be able to progress into the next step. There's only so many steps. They can't do it forever, but that was the intent when we originally developed it, yes.
And part of that also, in the report for 2018 and the plan that they laid out, was that generally employees would step in January, and then if there's any cost of living, that would be above that, it would be in July. That's the way that plan was laid out initially. So depending on the year and the finances and what's happening in the market, you would potentially do a January and a July increase.
Okay.
That's, again, it wouldn't have to happen that way, but that's the methodology, or the way to keep the plan moving forward and not get stuck.
And since it's that would be a merit-based system.
Well, it would be, you would have to have at least a meets.
That's what I mean, it puts an added emphasis on the evaluation system. The department heads would really have to look at that as I'm not saying they don't, I'm sure they look at it as a very serious document, but it adds more emphasis to that evaluation process too.
And that comes back to performance,
Right. So I mean,
which is what we want. It's different, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not completely merit-based because, you know, I think there are very few employees that continue employment in Marion County that receive less than a needs expectations on their evaluation. You know, obviously the evaluation tool is important, but this is not just an increase, you move a step if you get a certain score. You know, you move a step as long as you're performing at least a certain level.
It's built on meets or above
Right.
and longevity.
Right, or you could put it based on exceeds or above. I mean, I think the board could state that, and it's not really based on longevity. This would, I mean, right now it will be because some people will be placed higher based on their years of service and where they currently are. But this, you know, over time, that longevity piece of it would fade out.
Fade away.
Mhm. Because you may remember that they recommended that if you do any kind of a longevity, that it would be a separate from the base wage and not built into your base wage schedule, the way that it has been.
Need to be clear with your nomenclature. The way this is set up, as I read it and looked at it, and I'm assuming that's what they were discussing, is meeting expectations. You look at a job description for someone and say they're doing adequately with that. And that's very different than someone who comes in on a true merit base and you say they're so much better than the job description and have exceeded in every category or a number of categories, so we're so impressed that we look at a potential for some other reward on a merit-based system. They're two different things, I mean, if that's been clear. So you want to be real clear as to what it is you're adopting when you look at this, because it's a little different in terms of what your evaluation process is.
Yeah, I think the board could, Melena, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the plan structure, the way it is, if the board wanted to do additional for a higher score on the evaluation, you could. But then again, you've got to make sure that everyone is all, that they're being objective and they're evaluating.
And equitably administered.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. This is, if I can chime in here just for a second, because what we did was, whenever we develop a STEP model, we never want anyone to assume that a STEP model is guaranteed pay. And so we will always recommend that you tie adequate, that's normally what we say is adequate performance now to that STEP increase. How you measure that is largely dependent upon the organization and whether or not you're doing evaluations, how sophisticated they are, how well trained your managers are, because that is, you start getting into performance pay, and that's a very complicated process. And I would agree, merit is much different than what you're seeing here. We have seen organizations that have said, provided that they are not being under any kind of like a disciplinary process or performance improvement plan, we're going to let them have the steps, and that they are relying on the managers to, make sure that they're monitoring those types of performance concerns. We have had other organizations that have gone to that in our evaluation process, the step is going to have to be based on, so many categories that exceed expectations. And so that really becomes a policy decision from the commissioners of, when, we've set up the step schedule, what do the employees have to do in order to gain the next step? And what does that, adequate performance, what exactly does that mean for your organization?
Or you just said it, managers has to be trained. That is a big thing that I think that we've seen our leaders or department heads have different styles of what they approach on those evaluations. And somehow everybody would have to come in the same, because if you have 2 or 3 departments down here that never give over a certain level, other departments are given over here to the right and the good way up here. So they would get increases, and the other departments may not even stand a chance. And so somehow we'd have to come with a better standard than what we have today, even though those evaluations are very they ask the right questions. It just, we all have to get trained on them so everybody evaluates the same, I think. That's my opinion of that. So, any other questions now, since we've talked a little bit here?
While you're thinking about any other questions, there was something that was discussed just a few minutes prior to the performance and the merit conversation of the placement of the positions. And one of the things that we, this happened back in 2018, so it's been a few years, but when we place positions, we're using multiple items to make that determination. Then the first one is going to be what the market tells us. The second is the position questionnaire and that information that they've given us. The third is compression and how much separation you've got. You've got a hierarchy in every department, and does that hierarchy have sufficient space in between those various ranks of the position? And then the last thing that you have is more of that internal comparability that occurs across the organization. Not every employee is probably going to agree with their position placement on the salary schedule, and I completely understand that. That's not uncommon. One of the things that we have to be thinking about is make sure that the salary range that we place that position on is going to be successful for the county if you ever have to fill that position again. So we always have to keep in mind that you might be dealing with something internally right now, but we don't necessarily look at the person and their performance. We're looking at what do you need to do in order to fill that position in the future, because if you're not going to be market competitive, then it's not going to do you any good. So most certainly, if you get to that point of implementation, if this is something that the county has decided that they're going to be moving forward on and there are questions, then Tina can talk with me about any type of questions that come up on the placement of positions. We don't normally defend the placement of positions, but we'll give some general information about why things went the way that they went.
Glenn, I've only heard, since you did that back in 2018, I've only heard one department question what some of their positions were and they didn't feel was right. I've only had one department say that to me, so that was a good thing, I thought, that
And I can tell you during this process, that department was visited with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Tina, any further questions to Elena that we should look at or address?
Should be asking.
Should be asking, yeah.
I can't really think of any other questions.
Tina knows how to get a hold of me, so as this topic comes up again, if there's any clarifications that you need, just please have her reach out to either Dr. McGrath or myself, and we'll be more than happy to answer any other questions that you have coming up. We know that this is a big decision. You've got a lot to ponder here, and so we'll be available to answer questions as needed.
If we was to take one of your plans, are you going to sort of be one of our supervisors to see if we administer it right, or is that a fair question?
I'm available to help Tina, however
Okay.
she needs me to help, sort of coming down and sitting in the chair down in Kansas.
All right. Well, thank you for what you have done. We appreciate it very much. We wanted to get back to it. We never did the first time, and want to get back to it, see what the real thing is, and as we talked to start this meeting with, or part of it, why hiring people is getting tougher and tougher in our world, let alone with what all kind of things is going on since 2018. So I think we have to make some adjustments. I will tell the taxpayers that it's not a pretty picture what we're going to have to do, because we have a tax lid on, and you can see there's a couple mills here involved by the time 2022, maybe 3 mills even involved that we would up our wages.
This is the first year being mill and a little over.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have to cut some costs somewhere, because budget, I mean, the cap, you know, just says, here's what you got.
You mean you didn't find that money tree in the last 3 months or anything like that?
No, no, haven't.
No money tree either, I know, so.
We could use a little help.
Yeah,
from the
difficult
speaker, actually.
conversation, for sure.
Yeah, it's, and I think we're not the only ones in this position.
You are not the only one, and, you know, we serve clients in 38 different states throughout the United States. Hiring is becoming increasingly challenged, and, you know, even when I was talking with your comparables, I talked with a number of HR departments in your area. They are, you know, they're experiencing the same struggles, some more than others, possibly with, it sounds like there are, you know, many private companies out there that are you know, being highly competitive and drawing some of their workforce away. And it's just not easy. We are, you know, in this country right now, we are in a period of flux, and it's probably going to be a little bit of time before things settle down to see, you know, what the long-term impact is. Right now, things are just moving so fast, and people are just simply just trying to hang on and be as, you know, reactive as they can without breaking the bank. So, you know, you have a challenging time ahead of you, and we are here to help you however you need.
Okay, just thank you.
Before she gets off,
Okay.
you
Thank
brought
you.
up a good point.
I think you covered
Okay.
the question here, just a second.
The, on
Oh.
the tax lid, if, to say we weren't gonna do any cost cutting, anything, would, and maybe it's a question for the accountants, but, is the 171 even doable with the tax lid? Or, I mean,
Well,
I know we're allowed to move up, but only so much.
right,
Yeah.
and it,
Yeah.
the thing is, you can't really increase, and it's gonna depend on what our value does.
Yeah.
But you, like, the 171 would probably come out of your reserves right now, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's food for thought.
When you see the
Understand.
ability to do anything, and you can't just add it on.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah.
But if your evaluation goes up, you are gonna have more
Yes,
receipts.
I'm just looking at.
Well, yeah,
I'm
but
just looking
even to
where
be
we are
able to
today.
capture a portion of that, you capture a small portion, but not beyond the CPI.
Did we not go above last year? We had a lot, but we couldn't use it all because of the tax lid, correct?
Well, we were able to capture it because the valuation went down, but the level was there, that we kept the dollar up.
The previous year, we captured some, but it went into the risk management to be used only for disaster relief. And actually, that has helped us a lot through COVID because we have used it for that, so.
And right now, if you can see the number of employees, it's not gonna affect every employee.
Right.
No matter what, when we say we're gonna put a pay raise, well then, there's gonna be the person out there, either is already, according to the plan, is above their pay line. And so, when we implement it, we're gonna get the comment that, well, it didn't do me no good.
But that was the whole point. We
Yes.
need to bring the positions that are out of line in line.
Right. So we do have.
That's been the
That's-
contention since
Yeah.
2018. That's why we never did ever get anywhere.
Once you're in line, you don't quite have this conversation about taxes either. I mean, because you're moving up in small enough steps.
Right, it's smaller
You could
increments.
foresee it.
That,
Well, I agree that we couldn't, I don't think we can implement it totally in 1 year. But last year, we had a valuation decrease, so we had to increase the mill levy to capture the same amount of dollars. I'm just looking in the crystal ball, I don't think that's gonna be the issue this year. But, crystal ball might be lying to me.
Actually, I do have another question for our expert online. Okay, we've got our full implementation cost for one year. Once we're at that level, the next year, we would just have a 1%
Okay.
or merit.
Melina, can you hear what he's saying?
Well, I think the question is if we were to do an implementation,
Right.
that becomes the new base. Is that the cost, or is there
Right.
going to be more cost?
Right.
Yeah, and there will be more costs as you have employees that are stepping. So your additional costs then will be if you are going to apply any kind of a cost of living adjustment on an annual basis. And then second would be any of those step increases that the employees experience. Now, that is all relative because your steps is going to be based upon where you are in the salary schedule. You have people who are coming and people who are going, and so that will always be a fluid number. So what you should expect is that really what this is saying is your new salary base has to increase by 171, all right? And then in the forward years, in the future years, it will be step increases and any cost of living adjustment.
Right, good, that helped clarify for me. But also in our discussion, we have to consider if by making this investment, which is a large investment at this time, but if we're able to retain good employees, that means we're going to be spending less out hunting for employees, less
Right.
training employees. That's not cheap.
Cost benefit.
There's a lot of expense there. And just like seeing our tenure drop by a year in 3 years' time, statistically, that's huge.
What I can tell you is when we do HR audit, and this is, law enforcement is a little bit different from this number that I'm going to give you because they have a little bit more in equipment costs and more training costs. But the cost of turnover to an organization is typically 1.5 times what the annual salary of that position is, because you have to consider obviously the salary, you have to consider your recruiting costs and how you're going to replace someone when it's vacant, if there's any overtime costs, plus the training time. And then there's always that there's this area that you can't necessarily put a number to, and that's what the operational impact is when you have vacancies that you can't have filled. So our general rule is that turnover is 1.5 times the cost of the position.
A second question.
Very expensive.
What would be a goal for tenure? We're currently at 7.61. What would be a goal?
So he's asking what a goal would be for tenure. If you could hear that.
Yeah, so what I would like to see is that you hold that, I think you're at 7.7 years, and we would want you to try to be able to maintain that at 7.61. If you can maintain and not lose anymore, then I would consider that a win.
Way down in employees, it's gonna go down.
The years of 12 and 15 years are gone. They're done.
Yeah.
I started doing this in 2012, 2013, and the tenure was, 12 years, 15 years at that point. Government positions, you know what, they have a hard job. Government employees, it's often a thankless job. They often have to interact with, individuals who are not happy interacting with the public sector, government, and, they have other opportunities. The private sector very much is competitive to you, and so those days of that long tenure is absolutely done. So just try to maintain what you've got.
Elena, I do have a question on the numbers that you provided in the costing here.
Yep.
I apologize, I probably should already have looked at this, but the
That's okay.
the implementation, does this include the elected department heads, or is that a separate implementation?
Nope, that is included. That's everyone. It should be.
Okay.
Let me double check, but I'm sure that I had them on my original roster.
It's on the
Okay.
page before.
Yep.
So, I mean,
Or
Okay.
2 pages before.
Yep.
I think they found it, so
It is.
it's in there.
It's E1 through E5.
Yes, the elected officials are included in that cost. Yes.
Good.
So, I mean, if you decided not to do something with electeds, that could,
Yes.
reduce.
That's strong.
Okay, one final time from Elena, and then the board probably, a big thank you to her for doing this, we appreciate it, but does the board now want to continue addressing this today? Do they want to have a special session on this, or we're here right now, or what is?
Do we need to have our accountant look at the tax lid and see what type of effects this would have if we implement it all at once or tiered?
Or even what we can do.
Or even what we can do? Would that be wise before we
I
act?
think so.
I mean, I'm ready to act on it if we
Right.
can do it.
But you gotta have money.
Right.
I think,
But, you know, we have to look at our revenue streams and what we could use to fund that. Of course, our general revenue streams are ad valorem tax and sales tax.
Yes.
Now, we do have a couple little other pieces that we might be able to use, but, I mean, I'd like for Scott Lloyd to
Okay.
at least have a look at it, and maybe report to us.
Okay, I think that's a good idea. That
Because I'd like to see us implement something in July.
yeah, I think we gotta go with either option 1, 2, or 3. Just, which one can we do?
3's out in my book. I won't go with 3. Has to be 1 or 2. I'm just saying.
I guess I'd be more in favor of 2 then.
I mean, I'm inclined to 2, but I think we need to have it, I think we need to see what kind of ramifications it has.
I agree with Kent getting the information from Scott Lloyd before we decide between one.
Right.
I don't,
And he should be able to do that fairly quickly, shouldn't
Are we speaking out of line here, or?
No, I think I just need to make sure and clarify what you
The
are
direction.
wanting
The
on
direction.
that, and so
Yes.
we can,
he? I guess what I would ask
I
is
just
if
don't
he
want to
could give
violate
us
the tax lid in any way.
the implications of implementing option 1 and implications of implementing option 2 from the tax lid.
I think
Okay.
Is that
I
where
think
you're
that's fair,
going?
Dave. I really do. I think that's fair.
Is that clear?
The pain of 1 and the pain of 2.
Exactly. I want to know the implications of 1 versus 2.
Right.
I mean, we've
what
got.
does he think?
With all county, the elected people and
Yep.
everything.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm looking at all.
Okay.
I gotta make the
Okay.
jump sooner or later, otherwise, you
Yep.
know, the tax lid will always be glaring you in the
Roadblock.
face, not
Right.
letting you
Right.
move.
Well, then I guess you've heard the feelings, Tina. I think maybe I'm gonna charge you with taking that and getting hold of Scott Lloyd and ask him if he can do this for us. If he can't, well, then we'll move to something else.
okay.
But,
Hopefully next week or the week after.
Kent's gonna be gone next week.
Oh.
You can act on it, you know why. I mean, we've got a little bit of time, but we need to address it and get it taken care of.
Yeah.
Anybody don't like it, you blame the guy that wasn't here.
All right,
I mean,
so,
if you're gonna implement it in July, you're gonna have to let staff, they need to know this month. Right, Tina?
Either one of these, if you went with 1 or if you went with 2, you would like to start it in July?
Right.
Okay.
And do a mid-year.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
That's me, I don't know what the
Yep,
rest
I
of the
agree.
commission.
that's a whole nother question for me. I think you addressed it, but I'm not sure. If you started mid-year, you're talking 59,000. And then the next year, you have to make up for that 118 that you didn't.
That you didn't do?
Yeah, so you're gonna have to have 59 on top of 114.
Yes. Well, on top of, yeah. On top of
Catch up.
Yeah, that's just to get you to 118 then. And then the 2022, that'd be plus, I think you'd have more than that. I think you'd have oh, I see what you're saying. 114 plus 59, yeah. You'd have that plus.
So you're talking right back up there at 170 again.
Yep, right back at 170.
Right.
That's right.
it's just spreading it out.
Just spreading it out, it's all gonna be the same number.
Yeah, it'd be nice to talk about it next week, but sure got to by the 17th.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we need to act on it prior to the end of the month.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know how busy Scott Lloyd is.
Well, that's what I was wondering. Yeah, we don't know.
I
Okay.
think he's probably gonna be looking at it in a general way, you know, as far as specifics and looking at the budgets themselves, that's probably gonna fall on us more in our office, so.
Okay.
Well, do you think that's a waste of time and money then? To involve him?
No, I mean, I think he can give
I mean, he's
general
gonna charge us.
guidance.
He's gonna do it for free.
I think a general question, he will help us without extra charge, so. But I don't know what his schedule is, I haven't spoken with him recently, so.
Yeah.
Until the 17th, who knows?
I just know that right now, I don't know how many employees we're short countywide, but we're six or seven short just in Road and Bridge right now. And from what I hear from other employees that we pay in a similar price range in this county,
Yeah.
they're getting 0 applications.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
I'm gonna give my little spiel on it, my soapbox for a couple of minutes. We've got good employees.
Commission, do we have time for Dave to get on? Okay.
1 minute.
Oh, come on.
Dave,
Come
go
on.
ahead.
Give
Go
me
ahead,
2
Dave.
minutes. We've got good employees, we gotta keep them. And the second thing is, the commission knew in 2018 that they were being underpaid.
Right.
And the message sent to the employees was, it's okay that we underpay you. And that is an inappropriate message from my standpoint. I can say that because I'm the new guy, and I wasn't here in 2018. But I think, I thought about bringing a target, but the signal we need to send is that we're gonna pay our employees appropriately. And they have performed. One of the things I always said, as far as taxes, are you getting what you pay for? Well, as an employee, I'd ask, am I getting paid appropriately for what I do? And the message we're sending is, well, we don't think so. This is a way of I don't call it a raise, I call it a fairness issue. Paying employees fairly. And especially in today's competitive market, we've got to pay employees fairly in the marketplace. So when we're hitting the public, giving raises, we're not. We're making our pay scale appropriate for what the employees do in the marketplace.
You gotta know that may not fix all the problems either.
No, it's not gonna fix all
There's
the
some
problems.
places that pay very well, that can't fill applications.
But it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, no, it's,
And the final point on my soapbox.
We have to at least be in the game, or we're gonna have to privatize the county at some point,
Right.
aspects of it.
Of any investment the county can make, investing in our employees is the best investment. And I think most businesses are the same way. You invest in good employees, you're gonna get good results. Our county employees live locally, bringing their wages in line, that money's not gonna be spent frivolously. That's gonna be spent on rent, it's gonna be spent on their homes, it's gonna be spent on their families for schooling.
And a majority of it will be reinvested back in this county.
Exactly. What better investment is there to make?
Okay,
So that's my soapbox.
thank you, Dave. I did not hear, though, how we want to address the longevity plan. To me, it needs to go.
I'd be in favor of it, that goes away.
We get this set.
Right.
and we
Once
get
this
some
is
decent
set in stone,
and this longevity plan goes away.
And I'm just the opposite. I think that's very important to reward people for years of service. Because, that goes back to your 1.5 times salary to retrain somebody. Somebody's been here 10, 15 years, they ought to be recognized.
And one of my biggest
Maybe
reasons.
not with money, but recognized somehow, the years of service.
I'm not saying that, but the one we implemented.
We can always recognize.
acknowledgement, yeah, it's
Yes.
not.
What
But
about
the one we implemented, Dave, didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. I mean, we tried it and we thought just what you were thinking right now, but it didn't turn out that way. And so I'm just saying that I'd rather get some of these pays up and.
Pays up.
And,
I mean, even if you give them a free supper,
well, I'm not saying.
call them up amongst the peers and congratulate them.
And some of our problem back then was not just years of service, it was, you start a new position, well, you start at the bottom, and that was some of the problem. And
That's not right.
That's what I'm saying, it wasn't, so, and just something that worked out that way. I mean,
It's a Christmas banquet every year, we ought to
Yeah,
introduce the 5, 10, 15, 20-year people.
but I think our main goal right now is see how this affects, see what Scott Lloyd says about it, and get back with us, get it on the agenda by May the 17th or so.
Okay.
And if we can, if possible, and see where we're headed with it. If there's any other information, Tina, we need along the line, please provide it.
Okay.
Things that you've got problems with, implement or something.
Okay.
I think all of us want to be a part of it and be on board with you. So if there's any help we can do, go ahead. Any other questions, final questions? Ready to move on? Okay. And are we Bryce, scratching Bryce?
Well, I didn't know if he would send someone out or not.
Okay, okay.
I
Road
just-
and Bridge, do you have anybody out there today who's coming up? Anybody
I
on?
talked to him earlier this morning, and he didn't indicate that.
Yeah, I didn't expect Bryce to be here today.
I didn't know if Steve was gonna be on.
Right, I didn't take it
Yep.
off because I didn't know if
Right.
maybe Steve would come
Right.
in.
I don't
so.
see him, so.
But I don't think so. Doesn't
Okay.
seem like it.
Moving ahead, planning and zoning. Sharon.
Hey, would it be possible, Chairman, to go ahead and sign this resolution before I forget?
Yes.
2021-12.
Yes.
Cost share that you approved earlier.
I got it to guess.
Hi, Sharon. Oh, yeah.
We're actually on schedule. Where are we?
Oh, resolution number.
We skipped an item. Always ask.
Which one's this? Which one's this?
We kicked them off.
A new rule for all commissioners is to have cheat sheets up here knowing the resolution number. Commander Daring here is in charge over here. Good job, Joe, that's awesome. Count back for Tina.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Okay, Sharon, I think we're settled down here and ready to go.
Okay. I just wanted to talk with the commission about feedlots in particular, known as CAFOs, Confined Animal Feeding Operations. It seems our county regulations are a bit contradictory in what is required or not required. And then there are also some issues that I think it would be helpful to have Brad chime in on as far as statutory regulations and different things like that. The piece of paper I just handed to you has some excerpts from our county regulations in the different areas, like in Article 1, it talks about feedlots needing to have a conditional use permit. And then in Article 1, it gives the definition of what a feedlot, what a commercial feedlot is defined as. In Article 2, the Ag District regulations state that the lands used for agricultural purposes, as defined in these regulations, are and shall be exempt from any and all restrictions or limitations. No administrative interpretation shall be made that results in any restriction or stipulation on land used for agricultural purposes. Article 13, again, no restrictions to the sale or marketing of products raised on the premises. And then Article 19 states that a conditional use permit is required for a commercial stockyard or feedlot. So we kind of bounce back and forth in the regulations as to what requires a conditional use permit for that use of land and what is just inherently agriculture and what is permissible. The other 2 points that I wanted to talk about was the Kansas Livestock Association is in the opinion that counties are prohibited from from regulating CAFOs. And they cite a case law, David versus Board of Commissioners of Norton County in 2004. Also, Kansas KSA 2-3201, which is the protection of farmland and agricultural activities. You can read through that. Also prohibits local government from further regulating CAFOs. I know that part of the intention of the county regulating something like a commercial feedlot is that we're concerned about our roads and the use of those roads and who will maintain them when we have several, 85, 90,000 pound loads going up and down those roads day in and day out. And then also setbacks, particularly from cities. But I guess my question to the board is, do we regulate CAFOs locally? Do we need to make some revisions to our regulations? We definitely have some contradictory statements in our regulations that need to be cleaned up. But in doing that, we need to decide what direction we're headed here.
Karen, is there any licensing on under 1,000 feedlots?
No, commercial feedlots.
It all starts at 1,000.
1,000 animal units, which for like feeder cattle would be 1,000 head. It's different for swine, horses, chickens.
There's also some difference, Sharon, isn't there, with the cow-calf? There was something I
Yes.
saw this weekend. So even that division, gets complex very quickly.
Right.
I know in this county, over the last 10, 15 years,
Mhm.
those that were in the cattle operations that were feeding 1,000 are now feeding what, 5,000?
Mhm.
8,000?
And I'll also throw in there, most of you probably know that those feedlots have state or federal permits already, and they're subject to setbacks and different things that are regulated by the state or at a federal level. And the Kansas, there is a division that specifically deals with the waste from feedlots.
Mhm.
So even their lagoon ponds are out of my jurisdiction.
Oh, yeah.
KDHE.
KDHE controls all of that. I don't have any jurisdiction over that part of it.
Aren't you happy?
Yes, yes, they can have that.
Really, all operational aspects are under KDHE. The only thing locally would be road impacts.
Distances from a community.
How about, aren't the setbacks from cities are in state regulations, aren't they?
Yes.
Okay.
KDHE controls a lot of the setback issues with it even. And I'm not sure how, this may be a better question for Brad. Can we regulate more strictly than the state when it comes to setbacks?
Yes, no, and maybe.
Okay.
I've got about 7 pages of notes from this weekend. It begins to be easier to envision if you go back about 35 or 40 years and the activity level legislatively began to really pick up then. Federally and state, KDHE takes the place of the EPA in some instances, but not in all. And the states have come up with some of their own for water quality preservation. Then the EPA came back in and said, oh, but overall pollution and groundwater management from state to state to state, because of the EquisBed overlap in different states, means that we have to say some things as well. So we've got nitrate regulation that we couldn't even dream of grasping very readily on just a 5-minute review. But the biggest part of this, I guess, that makes it easy to begin to envision is the family farm operation that I grew up in versus what you have now. A dairy where you had a family putting 100 cows on a place with a little bit of a some type of a cesspool or some area that you could potentially drain or just let sit there and overflow, which we did, no longer is available to you. And now you have those herds, as you guys were talking about, whether it's cow-calf or it's feeders or it's dairy or it's whatever, that are 500 to 1,000 times bigger than they were back at that time. And that has become of interest to both the state and federal. Then we have EPA, we have KDHE, and the Department of Ag, all who get involved in this in different ways, depending on what it is. And the permitting is usually primarily still, I would say, out of the state, but depending on what they're doing and what they're producing and what they want to do with the effluent, it all becomes commingled. We still have, besides roads, the ability with the general overlay of something called nuisance. So smell, certain other types of issues related to, I even cringe to say it, but runoff, even though that's the wastewater, we do have the ability to still regulate, but we run afoul immediately of, well, okay, are we under-regulating in some way relative to what KDHE does? We can be a little more strident with our nuisance for odor, for some runoff, in addition to what it might do. By runoff, I mean if an adjacent property owner, you don't have that green space sufficiently in place where we can even come in and have Sharon walk in and say, no, got to plant an extra acre of green grass or brome or something there that it filters through.
Just to back up on the nuisance issues, is there redress from the state if there are local landowners that have, like, say, do they complain to the state or do they complain to the county?
County. Much as I hate to say that because I know Sharon doesn't want to hear it either, but odor and those kinds of things, it's us. I did make that phone call after we last talked and called KDHE and said, okay, if we've got a smell problem, where does that go? So you tell us, that's your deal. Because for the most part, they're fairly blunt. Yeah, they said it would have to relate to something that they generally regulate. They are not going to get into aesthetics, as they refer to it.
Wind changers.
You know, and so, yeah, temperature and wind speed and direction are our problem as far as they're concerned. For most, they don't have the regulatory wherewithal in terms of the number of people to come out and deal with that, because that has to be dealt with case by case on a given day or a given few days. Okay. So it got more complex, not less, after Sharon and I talked. I thought, well, I got this, but no, I don't, not completely. There's a lot of pieces to it, and that's why it really became one of those classic work session kinds of things, because what staff is confronted with is difficult to just say, well, this is what we're going to do. We'll do it case by case, but that then begs the issue of how equitable we're being and how, administratively fair, depending on the circumstances. And then you start getting people going, well, you didn't do that to so-and-so with their hog operation. And I know they were getting complaints, or whatever it may be. So we have to kind of get our hands around it. But that is a little bit more of a challenge than even we anticipated in our initial discussion, I think.
Negative parts per million meter instead of standard.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's that way you have something objective. Because as it is, what someone may find, what is offensive to one smells like money to somebody else. I mean, it depends on what they do for a living.
They both may have the same parts per million.
Yeah.
Are there counties that require CUPs on their commercial feedlots?
A lot of the local counties around here have decided not to regulate CAFOs because they're already regulated.
Yeah. I'm just wondering about the 50,000 gallons out. Are those counties requiring CUPs on those feedlots?
I'm not
Is
sure.
there any kind of road maintenance agreements with them?
Can I excuse myself from the conversation for a while?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Out west, probably the sand roads don't make any difference. And that's a vital industry, so they're gonna let the feedlots do whatever they want.
I think of the name of that community. My son would know where I'm talking about. But I inquired, just looked on the website and then made a simple phone call in Texas, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. But they've got several.
Hereford?
It's not Hereford. It starts with a D, but I can't think of the rest of it to save my life right now. But
A whole bunch of them panhandle there.
yeah, and it's surrounded by these huge feedlots.
That's a town that's totally surrounded. You have to drive through a feedlot.
Yeah, to get there. That's
Yeah,
exactly
if you don't
right.
have 50,000 head, you don't have a feedlot.
Yeah, and they're incredibly generous and liberal about how they handle it, because that's their entire economy. So, well, start with the worst case scenario in terms of somebody who's really pressured by what's around them. And that's a real low threshold standard.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
can we take a 5-minute recess?
yes, we sure can.
Appreciate that.
We will take one from 2 o'clock to 2:06, or 2:01 to 2:06, and we'll be back at 2:06. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so recessed until 2:06.
Oh, geez, we getting old?
Yeah.
Oh, how you doing?
Okay, are you?
Yeah, great.
There's a restroom here.
Any better?
Well,
Yeah.
Why didn't Brad run him out?
Well, he didn't wake up till I asked him.
Got restraining orders.
That's just, I mean, I don't think he's supposed to be within 500 feet.
And I was trying to think, I'm glad she said something because, yeah.
Yeah,
500 feet, I think.
Yeah, that set her off right away.
Yep. Yeah, I just,
Want to hold her hand or something. I
he
don't know.
didn't realize it, so I just said something. I was saying to the rest, I said, he didn't hear me. I almost said something.
He can be in here with Sharon's in
Yes, yes, I think so.
Who's ever here first gets to stay.
Yeah.
I can. Yeah, we need to get the sheriff here. Get him out here.
I try to help. That was.
Yeah, this was supposed to be so, she just said she couldn't be here with him in the room because her heart was pounding so
Yeah.
hard. And she's been
That's a
having.
restraining order.
Yeah.
We should have been on top of it.
On top of what?
Restraining order made?
Yeah.
What about it?
We need to-
Sheriff's coming.
He'd
Oh,
ask-
is he? Okay.
He'd ask
So I
you
got to leave?
Ask you to leave.
Okay, well,
Or
let's go.
Sharon, or Sharon's.
Okay, let's go ahead and go.
Oh, he can come.
That's all right. That's the public comment, I guess, whenever. I want to go to court, I guess.
See you there.
Don't sound right, but okay.
Please leave the door, please.
I don't think by law you can be within 500 feet of her.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
that protection order, if it's still.
Okay, hold on one sec.
Yeah.
Kids.
Or Sharon.
God, I didn't see that.
Yeah, I didn't see it either.
I never thought about it when I walked in before you got her down quick.
Yeah.
We are back on.
Okay.
Oh, I guess I need to. Yeah, we've been recording.
Okay.
With no sound. I had the microphone on.
All right, we're back in session here from recess. And any final comments on that the board may have? I guess maybe, Sharon, are you on board with us here, or she's yours?
She's coming back.
Oh,
Going back over.
Looks like she's on. At least someone.
She just commented, like right at 2:06, that she'd be back shortly, and I don't know if that means online or in the building.
okay.
So she's signed in, but I don't think she's
Probably not. in
right there, yeah. Did you?
As far as anything I can see on this is, do we want to try to, if we're allowed to make it more strict on setbacks, do we want to maintain that? Do we want to keep that authority? Do we want to be able to measure parts per million to justify what a small nuisance is? And do we want to hold any accountability for roads?
Doesn't the state do a good job of policing everything?
Now, good
I
is a
think you
subjective
pay.
term.
Huh?
Good is a subjective term. Do they have the authority to do it? Yes, that's the best answer I'm gonna be able to give.
They got the authority to do it. Well,
And it's somewhat, well, that sounds
mean, we don't
critical, and
have,
I don't want it to, but it's somewhat sporadic.
we don't have equipment to test
No.
for smell meters.
Well,
What are you saying?
that one is solvable for us,
Wow.
because that's a fairly manageable expense. The,
Get it. So you go
my
to a
point
decimal
was, we
degree.
do have inherent in our system, the ability to protect the citizens with regard to nuisance. And then the road issue, when Sharon and I talked about it in terms of permitting or dealing with those CUPs, that would be our functional and pragmatic subject matter for something like that. I think those areas are things we can discuss, and this body's policymaking board can make those decisions and recommendations to staff, and we can implement. I think the rest of it, I need to probably get my hands around so I can give Sharon adequate advice about if it comes anything close to this particular subject called KDHE, or, you know, kind of we establish some kind of a protocol, because we don't have anything right now, nor have we ever, that I can find, indicating what is she supposed to do with this stuff, but yet she's the one who's she gets the question and gets it with enough frequency. This one required some attention.
I mean, like on the roads, we need to treat it like an airport, so.
Yeah.
You got a landing fee, so every time you
Yep.
bring a semi in, you got a $10 fee.
And we, you know, all of you and I can too, can go all over
I
this
think you're
county.
opening up a big can of worms.
Very,
You know,
very
I could
dangerous
see maybe
area.
talking about 3 or 4 operations in this county that run heavy traffic.
Oh, yeah.
But the rest of them run heavy traffic too, they just don't do it as much.
Yeah.
They don't do it every day. Yes.
Right.
Come on, you're all right.
Do you-
Come on in. Come on in.
Collins,
You're all right.
Are you?
Sorry.
We're talking about,
We're still talking about it.
we're still talking about what you brought.
Still talking about feedlots.
I apologize.
No,
No.
no.
No, actually, we
The apology goes the other way.
apologize.
We didn't recognize with everything that was happening there. Still not probably up to date on where everything is with
That's
the
my fault,
situation.
I'm sorry.
And we should have recognized that that's probably a violation, so it'll be taken care of, and I'm quite sure it will not go unaddressed. So, but right now, we're back in, on talking about different things and opening up a can of worms, I think is what.
Actually, it's a lot
Something
more
about-
dangerous
No.
than worms.
Yeah.
You know, I
That doesn't
hate
know
to
what you can
compare
do.
the operations in Marion County to the comparison to the operations you see out west, just because of the number.
No.
But the facilities are getting larger, and the traffic, you know, it has an impact on our roads, isn't it, out of it, but every operation in the county is running heavy traffic at this point.
Yes.
How many of these?
The days of the 2-ton truck are over.
Yeah. How many of these operations in our county has grown in the last 5 years or 10?
And there's a handful of them that
Yeah.
have grown a lot.
Yeah.
But again, it comes back to what areas and what can the county address, what can't the county address, what's addressed by the state.
But they're paying more taxes too. I mean, like,
So we're trying to draw some boundaries of what's appropriate.
There's an intensity of use kind of a thing that comes into play and allows us to do some things regulatorily that otherwise we wouldn't have. But like I said, I think the 2 broad categories are going to be the road element of things and the nuisance. And if we kind of think in those terms as simplistically as we can, those will be the places where we have the ability to rethink it. And I guess setbacks are an element of that, but it really is separate, so I probably should throw that category in as well. Virtually everything else, because nuisance encompasses a lot of those runoff issues and things that overlap to a limited degree, but still give us some control against wastewater contamination, effluent kinds of management, all of that. So we have the ability to regulate in those categories and actually be, as was asked earlier, more strident, not less. Matter of fact, we may be the only game in town in terms of how some of that is regulated, because I don't see KDHE coming out on smell issues. They just won't do it as a rule, unless it's related to what they are most interested in.
you have trouble with the runoff, so.
I wish there was a way for the state to have a checkbox for local control. You know, do you have any kind of a road maintenance issue with this proposed facility? We get notification when there's a proposed feedlot. Well, the state sends out a notification.
Yeah,
And
on
it's
permitting.
more so for water pollution and that kind of thing. It gives adjacent property owners the chance to make comments. You know, we get those, they're posted in my office. We've had several CAFOs that were permitted that I had never even talked to the property owners about.
And I thought that there was, and I admit I didn't have time enough to search all of that, was a publication requirement on certain of those as well that the state's supposed to do. So even if we don't notice it, you should be, as the county official, getting that notice, and it should be published, but I have not looked to see if I'm remembering that correctly or not.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We just get a notification from KDHE and
Is that the letter you see that somebody's doing something in the feedlot? That's that letter?
That's
And
what we
it's-
see, isn't it?
it's
Yeah.
Yeah, you will
typically
get
a
those.
long list. I mean, it'll have all the different counties that have proposed
Right.
feeding operations going in for that month or however they group them together. So that's our only opportunity to make any kind of comments on those. And sometimes it's just for a recertification. It's not even for a new facility.
Right, most of them are.
In theory, I suppose the other time that we would see it is if there ever is a variance request or application waiver from one that qualifies for the state permitting, that would still come to the county, even though the setbacks are currently set in most instances by them.
How is a town in Marion County that's sitting here, been here for hundreds of years, and X Factor comes in and builds a 999 head unit within a quarter-mile town, and can handle the runoff, can handle everything KDHE says, but we all know there's gonna be the odor problem, or most likely. So how does towns in our county?
It becomes a county issue because it is in the county proper. If there's a nuisance problem of that kind, the city becomes like any other citizen. They come to the county and say, you guys are supposed to control this because you have regulatory powers regarding nuisance. And most of the things that you'll see from both state and federal regulatory environments are that odor is also to be the responsibility of the feedlot, and you're to control it. And if you don't do so, it becomes our burden to prove it that we have a problem. But if we are able to do so, usually to a district court judge's satisfaction, if you can't get it resolved before that, they will be compelled to fix it, and there are damage potentials for that.
See, and years ago, I mean, I go back 25 years with relationship to either some sort of government position. But, you know, we always heard, and I don't know when it was supposed to have happened, the 2 and 3 mile setback all around our cities.
3 mile sphere of influence, that
Yeah.
has been watered down dramatically
Oh,
in the
it's-
last decade.
Yes, but everybody told me when I come on board with trying to learn something about them, why, this 2 and 3 mile setback, well, they just don't happen.
Help explain to me, Brad, it's been watered down, because I thought it was, I guess I missed out. Bring me up to speed on that.
Sphere of influence for purposes
Right.
of planning and zoning, for
Right.
example, has really become a shell of its former self. In
Oh.
most instances now, that sphere of influence is not even considered, where we had issues before, like with wind farms, or we
Right.
had different types of structures, whether it was cell towers and that kind of thing. You would receive notification
Right.
specifically as a municipality within 3 miles of your city limits
Right.
in any direction. Most of that has gone by the wayside, not all of it, but some of it. In terms of those cell towers, they have watered that down. They've made it a state regulatory kind of an environment. And the state now says, that's good, you can do that. Even within the cities, they're a franchise holder of the cities, for example, but yet they're not controlled by the city any longer as to where they put their lines, their infrastructure, all of that, how they take it out with, they'll leave stuff hanging on a pole, curled up, and we're like, that isn't good enough. But then we now have to, as of about 3 years ago, go to the state and ask them to deal with a lot of those issues.
Yeah, just seen the great big old power poles run down Wichita.
Yeah.
And it's in the news again the last few days.
Yeah.
In Wichita, Evergy decided, well, we're gonna put in a new transmission line, and they rolled through that area of town Mosley there, and stuck this stuff in. It was hard to ignore from a distance, much less right out your front yard.
In the
And
guy's
these,
driveway.
yeah, and all of those people organized and pushed back, and they're having serious hearings about that now.
Well, they put wood poles back in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the wood poles instead of the big metal ones.
Getting off metal ones, they're putting way up there.
Yeah.
I mean, does the state county association have any lobbyists to fight stuff like this?
They do. I mean, they get
Because
involved, but
you're fighting the livestock association, and that's one of the
it's
strongest lobbyists in the state of Kansas.
you will, in the right circumstances, you'll be shocked at what kind of influence some of these lobbies can have. Just no different than the Chamber of Commerce has. They all pay for one, and some of the local EDCs, Hardin County, paid for one. I don't know if they're still doing it or not, but paid for one individually themselves. Got to have somebody who will go out and get the ear of some of these guys, especially on the committees, to say, you know, you might want to give some thought to this, or we really oppose this for the following reasons. Give them their position paper, hopefully get them to read it or read it to them, and try to make an impression.
The lobbyists, you can't fight them.
Let's bring this back to full circle now. Our circles get pretty big here. What do you exactly want to help with on this? Whether this be changed or be eliminated, or on some of the issues that you have it written down?
I really just want to know the board's opinion on how we should or should not regulate it. Do we have the authority to be able to regulate?
And just as importantly, because it falls in Sharon's lap in terms of the staff person, when you look at these articles, she's done a good job of noting those. I can always go back through the statutory kinds of inconsistencies, and those add another layer of complexity to it. But in terms of our articles, sticking with what we can absolutely control, we have some real inconsistency in that, and it's difficult for us to reconcile that with the public if they come in and say, well, no, wait a minute. I read Article 2 and then I read Article 13. Which one is it, or whatever it may be? And part of that stems from what the state has done, but we nevertheless need to deal with our inconsistency. So what kind of guidance we want there, and it really will come down to a fairly straightforward question. You want us to just not regulate this stuff and let it go, or should we reserve the right and make these all consistent for things like elements of nuisance, our roads, and our setbacks?
I think that's what Jonah's comment was, it was after the smell meter, or...
And after...
Yeah, parts per million.
Then after that, I mean, we can probably craft some things that go before planning and zoning, because there would be the first point of contact on those. Let them discuss it, hash that through, since that's their bailiwick, and then bring that to you for here's what they think and here's why, and here's what they recommend in terms of making that consistent.
Kind of like
You have a number of members that feed cattle.
Yeah.
Is there any other side, to bring any other side of evidence in on this game? I mean, we got our problems right here. I mean, other than what we've talked about, is there anybody else to bring in to listen to this?
Well, there's any number of people, but if you deal with it from a regulatory perspective, I did make the immediate inquiry, since I had someone on the phone from KDHE. Would you send somebody down here and talk to us about how this works and dovetails? And there was silence, but it was, well, I suppose if you made the request, we wouldn't want to say no. And I said, well, it would be helpful probably for us if you have even a semi-canned presentation you could come to us with and say, this is what we do and what we're willing to, where our phone should ring. Because quite frankly, that just doesn't come up often enough in the normal day-to-day operational things for us to have that down cold.
Okay.
Well, actually, to give a presentation would be good for the planning commission.
Mhm.
Yeah, make the presentation to the planning commission and then maybe invite.
We could be invited.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let them do the heavy lifting.
And we'll have certainly interested parties from the public, just a few of them in particular, who I can think of who will want to be there to voice an opinion or ask a question, and let them. I mean, that's what, it's an open meeting, so that's fine. Rather they heard it from them than we at the point of, when they realize it later on and go, that's not right. Well, yeah, it is. We've been through this process.
Sharon, thank you. Is there anything else you have today for us?
That was the first one.
Oh.
There will be more.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yes, I'll pass this around.
Okay.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of recap and maybe find our center on some of the complaints and violations that we have ongoing in the county right now.
It serves several purposes, lets you see what it is that she's dealing with and that we occasionally are trying to tackle. And also some of it involves us making some determinations on general procedural protocol and exactly how far, in a lot of these instances, in an average sense, you want us to go.
This is just a really basic summary. I have more detailed information. I'm not sure that that's appropriate to share in open session.
Yeah, probably not.
But name, locations, names, things like that. If you need more information, I can.
okay, well, good question. Right there is just like police, sheriff's board, if you want to, as a citizen, want to go and see what they're working on or something like that. What is she required to put up and have a case on, or that she's working on? If a citizen comes in and says, "What are you doing here?" Is any of these public information what she's doing, or not public information?
Yes and no. If you go back to chapter 45 of the statute, in terms of what open records are available, I can take each one of these in turn and give her an answer, so can Tina in most cases. But the general answer is, I would not say absolutely here, look at everything you want, because it's not set up that way. Many of these have the potential for litigation, and some of the general reports that are issued are absolutely open records. Some of the more specific things that I might ask Sharon for become attorney-client work product, or also become one of the exempt areas under the chapter and the particular statute. So I know that's not a perfect answer, probably not a good answer at all, but it is case by case to some extent, and she has to be very careful what she releases in some instances, because we do quickly get into an area that is not a permissible release of a document.
Well, I should, John Doe or person come in, but I should have said the press comes in and asks. That's what I should have.
And it's same answer.
Same answer.
John
Yeah.
Doe and the press get to, even
Yeah.
though they sometimes don't necessarily think they should be treated
Yeah.
the same, they are.
Okay.
So, generally speaking, we have 9 cases that are on my desk, but they're making progress. They responded to either letters or phone call, some sort of
Just
preventive
conversation.
measures. Yes. So they're making some voluntary compliance. Council needed, we have about 8 cases, and those include ones that maybe I've sent a first, maybe a second violation letter, and then Brad and I may need to work together and decide what the next step is, what I have the authority to do, what kind of steps we can take from here without any sort of legal action.
Or even with legal
legal action.
The coercive element of what we can do, and if you total this up, more than half of these involve things where really there's extra work and extra intervention that's just going to have to start happening, because people begin to get the sense that out of sight is out of mind, and if they don't hear anything more, 6 months later we're still having a conversation about them, and that just can't continue because it starts to build on itself.
I would hope, unless I'm not thinking of something correctly, these are all property.
Yes,
Yeah.
these are all individual
Okay.
parcels.
Yeah. And usually different individuals
Well,
we've got one that isn't for sure that I can think of.
One, on here you see that 2 cases, we need additional legal action of some kind. One of those may have been resolved, I'm not sure. It was the Diamond Vista,
Mhm.
so that's not a single parcel, it's
Mhm.
it's a CUP
It's
folder.
broader, yeah.
So,
And these start to get into a lot of staff time and a fair amount of expense. So that's where this board comes in terms of being apprised, first of all, and then some direction on occasion, because we have to make some decisions about where are we going to draw a line, how far do we want to go with some of this stuff.
and these do not include about a dozen properties that don't have lagoon fence put up, so. I've just excluded that from this summary.
And our frustration with that is that it's not a terribly involved thing to do. But in a county setting, we end up having to get a court order to get it done or to remediate. Well, that's a 60-day process, and that's frustrating, but that's the way the law is in the state, because we have always treated county residents with far more latitude than we do within the city limits because of the intensity of use within the space. You're spread out a little bit more. If it's in the middle of a section, you don't hear people complaining about it as much. It's in the middle of the block.
And with those, it tends to catch up on itself, because when those people come in a year or so later, 5 years down the road, and they want a permit for something else, I say, well, it seems we have this violation on your parcel, we need to get that taken care of before I can issue a permit for this.
And if it's been sold twice since then, they're like, it's always been that way. Well, always as long as you've known that this has been going on forever. If we don't have a deed restriction, which is a useful little tool,
Right.
They sell freely, and somebody else thinks, well, it must be okay because they did it. And it's not something usually that your title insurance takes note of. And then we end up being the bad guy because someone comes in later innocently, really, and goes, what do you mean I can't get a permit? I didn't know anything about this earlier non-compliance. Why didn't you fix it with them? Well, we tried.
Yeah. And we do have a couple of those on this list as well.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, anything that gets to the legal action needed, can we just go ahead and do a deed restriction until it's resolved?
It's one way to do it, but some of these are sufficiently serious that I'm a little bit reluctant to, case by case. Some of these things, it doesn't hurt quite as bad if you want to say it that way. Others, because when I'm thinking of several ones Sharon's talking to me about, I can't say that, because I think they're the kinds of things that probably do require us to they're more serious. I guess maybe I should say it that way.
It's gonna cost us more money to do something.
We're going into litigation, we're gonna go into a courtroom. Yeah.
That's why we've done the deed restriction, to get away from the
That's
cost.
what I thought.
And that way, at some point in time, it'll be fixed.
Mechanics lien or something.
But it's ugly if a incident happens with just a deed restriction on it. I mean, like a lagoon, or somebody drowned in a lagoon, I think that's why I would explain.
Yeah, and that's, without getting into specifics, what we're trying to say, that some of these are not as readily excusable. And we carry, I don't know that we've notified them, so the liability element of it for us is not as great, but due diligence would suggest that if we're gonna put laws on the books, we enforce them. And if we're known to go, well, this is as far as we're gonna go because it's just economically feasible for us to go farther, and I don't argue that at all, because that is absolutely true. And you can assess those costs against some of these malfeasors, blood on the turnip, and getting it back, you can put the lien on the property. So it is, you do get it, but it's not immediate, and we deal in year to year to year budgets. And so you start spending a lot of this money that you don't see back for 5 or 6 years. It gets very frustrating from a governmental body's perspective.
And enforcement's only as good as the enforcement arm of it.
That's right.
And we do not have an enforcement arm of it, other than it gets to the point where it might be a sheriff action.
Yeah.
We have nothing else.
We can't
We
build
don't
a
have building
fence.
inspectors and all that stuff.
We can't build a fence and put it on the property tax.
We can with the appropriate court order. That's what I was saying earlier. We don't have the same remediation powers
It's a
that
city
the municipality has.
Okay.
I wish we did.
They can mow your lot and charge you for it.
Yep. Tall weeds, and about every August or September, you'll get that friendly notice that says, I just put $300 on your taxes for next year, and you don't want to pay it sooner or later, you're going to be up for sheriff's sale. So that's a fairly effective approach to those, even though that still takes time as well. But we can go tear down a building.
We have some of these enforcement actions and non-compliance around, seems like most of it's around our lake properties. A lot of them are.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't disagree with that.
I mean, wouldn't it be advantageous for those communities to incorporate so they could have their own arm?
If they'll do it.
Yes.
Did I just open a can of worms?
Oh, yeah.
We have suggested it.
His room is gonna be full.
And this should mean
It's
next
like your own
week my
protection
name
action.
doesn't come up.
That's correct.
And he's gone, so.
Hey, I've said it before.
Mhm.
I've said it before. I mean,
I think it's just a testament to why planning and zoning is needed, so that way that things don't come this way. If it would have been in place prior, you would have a lot of
50
these
years
issues.
yeah, we went a lot of
Kind
this
of like
stuff.
the septic tanks that don't exist in some
Yeah.
places, and some other things, you know, and then the new landowner doesn't think it's part of their problem because they bought the property, but don't understand it's part of their infrastructure. If we had planning and zoning back then, it would be an issue.
One thing I do have, Sharon, is on every one of these cases that you've got, you do have a record that's yay thick, and we have tried making a friendly contact to start with, and somewhere have you sent the letter that says, we will have action against you if you have sent that before you get into him, or?
Yes.
Okay,
Pretty much
Typically,
at the
the
same
first
time.
letter is notifying the property owner that there's a problem.
good.
You know, this is a violation because, and it states where it's a violation at. I may cite KSA
Yep.
if
Okay.
it's also an environmental issue. So that makes them aware that it's a violation. And then we usually ask for them to contact the county within 10, 20 days. It kind of depends on what the issue is. Just to give them an opportunity to contact us and have that conversation about how the issue will be remediated. And then there's usually a follow-up, depending on the case, maybe 30 days later to see where they're at in the process.
Okay.
Yeah, so there is some follow-up and some back and forth, and as long as that property owner is keeping open communication and letting us know what progress they're making.
I usually don't even hear
they're-
about those.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
when they get to the point where they haven't made any kind of contact or at least indicated an interest
Mhm.
in trying to cooperate or do something or address it, then Sharon will usually send me like the second letter or a note saying I'm not getting anywhere with this one. And then I'll usually go ahead and send one as well. And that doesn't always necessarily get a response either. And then they become a target, so to speak, in terms of on the list of ones that we're just not getting any compliance action on.
In the letters, do they state that they'll be subject to a lien or a?
Mine do. Mine talk about,
Deed
you know,
restriction or?
all legal remedies available under law. It's kind of the general statement, and then certain instances, because it needs to be specific so they understand, here's what we would consider doing. But usually the ominous nature of all legal remedies under law at least lets them know that, okay, you could potentially come after us and we intend to.
Mine usually state that they're subject to an injunction or
Yeah.
up to $500
Yep.
fine per day per current, or per occurrence.
And we've, you know, that, so they hear different things, you know, same thing, different ways from both of us. And sometimes that just doesn't mean a thing. It just kind of like, you have to wonder, let her go.
So, how soon will all these be wiped off the board? Well,
I'm thinking by Friday, we ought to pretty much
Okay.
be done, don't you think?
Okay. Well, I think that's what you're wanting to do, is try to get them to an end.
Yeah, and just let you know where we're at with these issues. We always have a list of violations and complaints. You get one kicked off the board and another one comes on
Yeah,
the board.
that'll
I
just
mean, we
be
take
it.
phone calls and emails all day long.
Always be
People
something
catch
there.
me in the
Yeah.
community and want us to address something. So will there be numbers on here every day? Yes, but my hope is that we can get to where there are more, and right now we're about 50-50. 50% of the people that I've contacted about violations or complaints are complying voluntarily. That's what we want.
Yep.
You know, somebody goes, hey, your yard's kind of getting out of hand. Do you think maybe you could work on that? It'd look a lot nicer and it would help keep our property value up in the neighborhood. I'll go, oh, yeah, you know, I've been busy. I'll get on that. I'll try to get that taken care of. That's really the goal. Or if a structure isn't permitted, a lot of times it's an ag structure. We do, now talking about restrictions on agriculture, we do still require structures to be permitted. The fee may be exempt depending on the situation and if they'll sign that ag exemption form, but they're still subject to setbacks. You know, they're still subject to the FEMA floodplain regulations, all those different kinds of things.
And we generally don't have a problem because of the educational element of it. Someone comes in and buys a Morton building, or someone who's gonna put it up for them, they know exactly what they need to come and do. The average citizen who's moved out into the country and decides, gee, I wanna build a 30 by 50 and I've got 10 friends and we're gonna get together and do that for a case of beer over the next 5 weekends, they don't even know necessarily.
Right.
You'd let them know. Some of them are like, oh geez, I'll come take care of that. Others like, shoot, I moved out in the country so I didn't have to answer to you people, and then hang up.
Right.
So you get different categories based on expectations.
And I think we're making improvements as a whole because we've put it on our printed envelopes that we send out. Marion County is zoned, big bold letters on the back.
Yep.
Our website now has information about our county being zoned. We also have a letter that goes out to local contractors that are on our resource list, and we ask them to sign a piece of paper saying that we understand Marion County is zoned, and we'll have our folks contact you about what permits they need. Granted, contractors are there to make money doing what they do, and it's the property owner's responsibility to get a permit, but we just ask them to at least mention it to them so that they'll call us. So we're getting the word out more so every year.
And
There's road
just
signs out too, I mean,
There are
I've
road
seen them.
signs.
Can't
Yeah.
tell you where they're at, but I have seen them.
Anything else, Sharon? Yep.
That's all I have for today.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will move to County Lake, I guess just a briefing on where we're at and what's going on. Is that Dave? Is that what you have in
Yeah,
mind?
I mean,
Isaac's on.
Isaac's on too? Okay.
visited with Isaac on Friday, and Brad said he needs some contracts.
Well,
But, you know, with the grocery stores.
well, I'm just gonna read it so we're fully transparent. Isaac did exactly what he should have. He said, I just wanted to touch base last Wednesday.
Yeah, free order.
And then I responded with, I gotta get to mine. We need to think through the process and perhaps build some policy for the previously discussed buying procedures and guidelines that we discussed in here. So I made note of that. We will need an agreement with the grocer, because basically if they're gonna be responsible for fresh goods, consumables and that kind of thing, I assume they know exactly what they're doing, but they're coming onto our premises to do this. I don't wanna make that more complex than it needs to be, but we need to, if they're supplying, if I understood that correctly, we need at least something as to, yes, we take all this on and it's our responsibility and we've got that.
They're not supplying, we're purchasing stuff from them.
But someone's delivering it and putting it out there and
No,
also,
Isaac is going to pick it up.
okay, then I'm misunderstanding part of it, so that may not
That's
require as
why
much.
there's a lot of misunderstanding, I mean.
Yeah, I think that's correct. If we have anyone else selling their inventory, we talked about maybe having spaces in there for someone just to set up their own booth, if you will. Well, the same kind of thing, there's some type of a leasehold agreement that we need to have in place with them. Again, having talked with our insurance carrier
Yeah.
about this. We need to check with our carrier to be sure they have us covered for the new activity with invitees and licensees, because now we're bringing people in there, they trip and fall. Have we made sure that that's all covered under our current linebacker policy or not? I'm sure there are more items for the list, but that is a start. It was not meant to stop them cold in any way, shape, or form, and Isaac did follow up later and said, would it be a best to get on the commission agenda? And I should have told him, heck yes, that would have been a good idea.
But we're in a time crunch, like
Mhm.
to order fish hooks and sinkers, he needed to do that last week.
Yeah,
It's
and if we-
gonna take a while.
Yeah, and if
But
we,
the groceries, how that's gonna work, he's gonna go in on Thursday and get what he thinks he might need for the weekend.
okay, so all gonna be handled by Marion County staff.
And the grocery store will give us a certain discount like they do restaurants and things like that.
Okay. I assumed that they were coming out and actually stocking
No.
in there, but if that's not the case, that will make that
There's
simpler.
a few items that will be that way though.
What?
Do you have some sort of a stock agreement,
Well, yeah.
Batteries.
like a basic agreement that we
Bait.
could?
We're buying bait.
Not really, but it wouldn't take
They
much
buy
to
the
do.
bait.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I
don't
mean,
they
I think
deliver?
it's
Yeah.
becoming more complex than it needs to be, I think.
But that's just so, I mean,
So
I think
purchasing
we're-
something that they deliver.
we're trying to make it too complicated.
Is that, which bracket does that fall in?
Well, I still think we've covered in some kind of a, if they're gonna bring it out there, it becomes a kind of freight on board deal, who's got responsibility that it's fresh, not contaminated, and no issues.
I mean, like, say, delivering propane bottles.
Milk, don't have anything like that out there, perishables.
Yeah, but
foodstuffs.
that's, we'll just swap those out, get close to date.
But who's responsible? Are we or are they?
Isaac is.
Okay, so Isaac does 100% of that.
Well, the propane is actually delivered by CGS and stocked, and he is responsible to unlock it and
And sell it.
and make an overhead.
And there's a perfect example of where I envision at least a little
Like-
half-page agreement of some kind.
Well,
because,
I'm sure they got something,
You know,
the propane company does.
But we just need to, gotta remember, I'm the one who sits here helping you try to avoid legal liability.
Right.
So I'm gonna do the belt and suspenders thing that I know is going to frustrate the heck out of you at times. But it was never intended to slow this down. I just gave him a response saying, well, here are examples of what we need to do.
Isaac would like to know the day he could order fish hooks. And then we
Mhm.
could work out the groceries and the propane. Because it's
Well, I
gonna
think you-
take a while to get those.
You all have given him authority
Yeah.
to purchase
I know, but
up
he-
to the 15,000 for
But
this.
Brad said he needed a
initial.
contract.
No, not for that sort of thing at all. If it's stuff he's
Well,
acquiring.
That's why he took it.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, that's just confusion there, but.
Well, I know
he's
that's
just-
why.
And he's being cautious, but no, I'm not.
Yeah,
Well,
he's,
this is not one of those
That's a
we
good
can.
thing.
Yeah, because we can get the blood pressure down on all those guys that have been trying to get this in place. I'm not an impediment on this, I'm just trying to make sure we've covered ourselves and them as to what we're doing.
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't mean to keep interrupting. What do you foresee about the purchasing policy? By
that's what I-
procedures, guidelines, what do you foresee about that?
Well, something, we talked about everything from the striving to do this all locally or some element of it locally, and how much in terms of purchasing authority week to week. It's gonna change a little bit depending upon the activity level out there, like over Memorial Weekend.
yeah.
He's gonna come back in and spend a lot more, I would hope,
He must
than he
spend
would
all
on an
his money
average
this
week elsewhere, and you establishing what that is for his authority. I didn't have any notations that we had that in place. And so that was just part and parcel of those general statements.
I guess I would make that one easy. I'd like to see 75% of expenditures be done locally through the year.
And we don't
It
even
allows him to
have-
make up
Yeah.
through the year, so it doesn't have to be per expenditure.
Just
Well,
average.
You can, what if he starts selling $100 fishing poles? You got to sell a lot of milk to get you 75%. Well, yeah.
And that's the
Your-
point.
Your kind of equipment, your bait's gonna come from outside the county.
I don't know how much bait costs.
It's getting high.
Yeah.
I don't know what his wholesale price is, so.
I hate to put a percentage on it, I'd just say as much as possible.
Yeah, we gotta use some common sense. And I think we
I
need,
don't think there's anybody.
And if you want to take the
let's
approach.
review it pretty much, see what.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you wanna take the approach that we haven't done this for a long time, just tell him to use his best efforts in these categories, and we don't even do a more specific policy, that is fine with me, because it's something
And
less I
nobody's gonna
control.
be in there selling stuff except Isaac.
Yeah,
We're not
Yeah,
gonna,
if he's
we're not
in
gonna sell
charge,
booze or
he's in
anything.
charge of buying everything, I would say he'd buy as much as he could locally.
Yeah, that's what he's gonna do, we don't have.
he's gonna track what he purchases, so
Oh, yeah.
you can come to him and say, now explain to me why we didn't buy that here when it's available, or what happened.
Yeah, he's got a new system he's getting ready to set up,
Point of sale.
but he needs time to do it, he can't wait. You only got 2 more weeks to,
No, I agree.
Get ready.
It's just, sometimes haste is not a good thing for us, but I understand in this instance, and if it, if it all
I'm
goes
pushing
south.
right now.
Yeah, if it all goes south, we'll just blame the board. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not a problem for me.
Well, I still think that you're probably need some sort of a purchasing, we have a purchasing procedure policy.
Mhm.
And if we're gonna allow him to go outside, we need to have the board approve something.
His ability to do
It
that.
can be very basic. I mean, the startup cost you've already approved
Mm-hmm.
separately. But as he goes forward, if you want a different standard for him based,
Mhm.
for the bait shop than you have for everyone else, then you do need some sort of a simple policy of what that is.
what's the county's policy?
Well, right now, the county's policy is $1,000. If it's over $1,000,
Per
it
time.
comes to the board. For,
So
if
if it's
it's,
turned in a fishing order, like what Kent was talking about a while ago, it could be $5,000.
Right, and
For bait or something.
Particularly for
Not after you set up,
Not
probably.
bait, but maybe if you bought one-time package of fishing gear or
Yeah.
something. But even that, $1,000
as long as he's,
buys quite a bit.
as long as he's steadily restocking, not just waiting till the end of the season.
I mean, he's not gonna buy the high dollar stuff put out there, cause it
No.
won't sell.
The county policy will work fine except for the initial one order. That'll be the only exception.
And you have already really kind of
Approved
approved
that.
that.
Approved that.
Yeah.
So I don't see any reason why it can't be under the standard county purchasing policy.
I still like to see some sort of percentage set on the county that
Well,
that forces you
he will do that.
to buy something. So say your expenditures are up for the year, it's actually.
Well, part of the purchasing policy does say that, I believe it already says to make
Exhaust.
efforts to purchase from within the
Yeah, he's not gonna go to Walmart and buy milk because it's 50 cents cheaper.
Yeah, I just,
I don't know, I
Does
just,
the
I'm not
board,
gonna
does
speak
the
up.
board feel about that percentage policy that Jonah's asking about? Does the board feel we need to set that or give guidance and see?
I think,
I guess-
my personal opinion is to give guidance, because I don't know what's gonna come up out there. Really don't.
I think there's just some things he's gonna have to buy elsewhere around the county. But the majority can be bought there, that's sold there, yes.
When he's on, I mean, Isaac's very conscientious about this stuff. It might be good to ask him, because the last thing that he had sent to me the other day was that he has the point of sale system, he's getting familiar with that. Electrician's already in, so I thought things were kind of moving ahead on that, and he may have a better sense even already at this point, having looked at what he's needing to acquire, how comfortable he is, or if he has questions. I don't know.
Are you on board, Isaac?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes,
There
sir,
you go.
can. Give us some questions that you're wanting answers for, so we can help you.
Well, I haven't got as far as grocery items go yet, because, you know, a lot of those are gonna be, put in the refrigerators, that kind of stuff. So I haven't done any of that yet. I was looking at, some possible fishing tackle, some stuff that I wasn't able to get local. We have got our point of sale system up. I think I've got everything figured out as far as the little bit of inventory that we had in the store and setting it up through county permits. We are not using it yet. I've just been playing with it, trying to get everything figured out. I am ready to purchase some fishing tackle. I haven't purchased anything yet because I was talking to Brad about it. And I just want to make sure everything's lined out. You know, I don't want to get ahead of myself and what we're trying to get done. So, but I was ready to purchase some tackle. The total was around $1,500. And that's when I had met with Tina to go over some stuff, and she reminded me to talk to Brad. So I have not purchased anything yet, but I am ready.
Okay, now, that $1,500, you order that this week. 2 weeks from now, you're short $500 worth. Are you gonna restock at that time, or how often are you gonna restock, try staying under our county policy of $1,000?
So I have not really, I don't know. I guess that is something I'm open, you know, if we want to have every time I actually need to do a big restock, I can come to the commission meeting, or however you guys want that to be handled. I can definitely work that in, you know. I would try not to just reorder one or two items at a time. I think that wouldn't be
And I think what I've seen out there, Isaac, all the time that I've watched out there the last 100 years was that towards the end of the season, you're downgrading, you're slowing down for the end of the season, and so you're not stocking as much towards the end of the season as you did the first of the year and stuff. So, you know, I think your orders will come down in price then, but to get you started, I think I can see it being over 1,000. But the reason why we're trying to stay with county policy is what this is, and I just wondered if you could foresee that you can stay under the county policy of 1,000, or if you have to go over, well, maybe you do.
Isaac, some of this initial stocking though is part of that original approved total, is it not?
Yes, it is.
So
yes, it is.
You've already approved that.
already got that.
You're okay?
We've got that.
And I will say,
I would say after the initial
after looking at what I've been looking at so far, I think maybe this initial purchase might be over 1,000. I don't think anything after this will ever be over $1,000. I mean, I can't say that with certainty, but I'm pretty positive after looking at pricing and all that we're not gonna be over 1,000 on restocking ever.
Isaac, I trust you, I'm behind you, and the rest of the board is too. Get her done, get her what you want, and then we'll get into this and make sure, like you said, see if you can keep it under 1,000 like the regular county policy is. So.
Yeah, and the vendors
Okay.
have probably got a minimum order that he has to reorder too, so he might order weekly.
As you play with your point of sale, Isaac,
Yeah.
you might look into seeing if you have a reorder limitation. I know I have it.
Yeah, he's
Basically,
got all kinds of stuff.
it basically lets you get down to a certain level, and then it throws a reminder at you, and that'll keep you from having your expenditures go too high.
Yeah. Any other questions? You haven't shot us one we can't answer yet. Keep it going.
You know, honestly, I think as far as that goes, that's good. The electrician, I believe, is supposed to be done this week. He's came out and he started. He's hoping to get everything finished. This point of sale's up and running. I've got a price tag scanner, all that stuff ready to go. I'm pretty much just ready to purchase some inventory. But that's where I'm at. I think as long as we're good there, you know, if I need to work on with Brad to get some of those lease agreements, because I think as far as the lease agreements goes, the only two things are going to be the propane and possibly the battery rack.
And the propane, Isaac, they should probably already have one, at least I've certainly seen it before, where they do the freestanding display, but we sell, they have a relationship with you that they memorialize in a little form of vendor contract. If they don't have that, then let me know and I can produce one.
Okay, and that very well might be, I have not asked, but I can just call them and ask right now as soon as I get off here, and see if that's something they have in play or if we need to get something put together, but I can do that.
And then in terms of the perishables you mentioned earlier, are those going to be delivered to you or are you going to have to make that run each time?
I believe I'm going to be making a run.
Okay, then I'm not going to worry about them necessarily coming out and supplying. I had thought that on those sorts of things, in order to guarantee freshness and all, that they were taking on that responsibility as a grocer and bringing them out. So
like ketchup, mustard, salt, and pepper, and paper plates.
yeah,
those are non-perishable.
Yeah, that's not going to be an issue. It'd be milk or some type of other
We won't have that much fresh food.
Yeah.
Lots of ramen noodles.
All right.
Frozen hot dogs.
Isaac, I tell you what I would like, by the 17th, I want a little note back from you that everything's accomplished and you're ready to sell for the weekend. Is that possible?
I can't promise, but I'll do my best.
All right, I know you will. I know you will. But the electrician, if you need to, you know, fire him up a little bit or so you can get things done, so he gets moving.
All right. It ain't me.
I didn't say a word about Jonah. I just said the electrician. Just make sure you can.
That part I can do.
Just say, hey, I've got to have this. I want her open by the 17th, or when board's asked by the 17th, we have it all done and ready to roll. So.
Okay, I can do that.
Thank you for being on board here with us, Isaac.
Hey, absolutely, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Say that isn't alcohol.
It's not Elcon, yes, correct. Where are we at now? Oh, executive session for 5 minutes for personnel update, for personnel performance. Should have had that out, didn't he? I move that we recess into executive session in order to discuss personnel performance pursuant to KSA 75-4319B for personnel matters of non-elected personnel with the board and Brad for five minutes. Ken, do you think?
Yep.
Okay. From 3 o'clock to 3:05. That's my motion. Second by Kent. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed, 5-0.
Okay. I know that's.
That's it.
So I gotta put stuff
Are we on recording?
for my
This
briefcase.
conference will now be recorded.
Look at, you know.
Out of executive session, there's no decisions
It
made.
was too good to throw.
And I'm going to commission, well, I'll go to public comments first. Is there any public comments up in there?
No.
Don't see any, we'll go to commission comments. And I do have one Oh, I know what it was about, Tina. I think, and I'll ask the board just offhand, I think we all know that we're broadcasting our meetings now, and we'd like to, is it time for us to spend some money so that we get some equipment in here, that the speaker system, that you don't have to deal with, Tina, all the time? I don't know a thing, I'm just saying, does the board want to go ahead with something here?
I was on Zoom when Kent was in the room for the hearing on the tax agreement.
Oh, okay.
Hillsborough. That is an amazing system. I think we ought to pursue something. I don't know who put it in, I just know that whoever put that in is probably who we should contact.
The one in Hillsborough? It's pretty much the one that's gone around and done all the municipalities in terms of those systems. I can probably get that name for you, because they huge screens on most of those. And then
screens here and there and there.
The camera system is manipulatable so that it will remotely rotate and do what it needs to do, and you can lean in and, get right on if you want to smile.
Very simple for Tina to be able to.
It is actually.
I have complete faith in Tina, she'll be able to handle that.
The mic
Well,
actually.
I know Tina's worked very hard on getting what we've got. Yeah. But if there's something we can help and do better, I'd like the commission to give permission to do whatever it takes.
I'd like to pursue something.
Get a cost on it.
Okay.
That's gonna shock you.
Oh, yeah, it's not cheap.
No.
It's not cheap.
They all use
But
the funds.
I think we want to promote, we want to show our audience out there that it's available and stuff, so.
And there's been a lot of people that were hesitant to it at the beginning, that I think have really turned around to realize that they kind of like it.
Yeah.
It's never going away, let's face it.
And Tina,
That's part of my
that's just,
life.
I don't want to drop a bomb on you, but.
No, it's fine. It's just that we researched all that
Yeah.
before,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the commission didn't want to spend that much money, so.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
a different commission.
I know.
Reevaluate.
And I think that just what Jonah said, it's here and there's more people joining than what we thought.
Could we also look at wiring?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Because
You don't like it on the floor?
no, well, I don't mind, but
Underneath it.
I don't like having like just the plug-ins where we have to,
Right.
like if we could
Right.
wire this table, that would be
Yes.
great.
We're not adjourned yet.
It's a whole different world than it was a year ago.
It's here to stay.
Might as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will get some information on that.
Yeah. And sorry, we are repeating ourselves on some of
That's
this.
okay.
Yes, I agree.
There's also something else that we're working on right now. The technology committee is working on some security
Okay.
proposals. And there's a specific type of a camera that can be used for security purposes, but also could possibly be used for recording the meetings without having to add anything different.
Cool.
And so I don't know when we'll have that proposal, but that's something, we don't want to work at cross purposes
Okay.
with that.
Well, thank you for being aware of both sides there, and I just wanted to get you a green light more or less to whatever it takes to do
Yeah, if we
whatever.
had something a little bit more workable, that would be great.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
I want something.
You
that
saved us a
can
lot of it.
Log the meeting on it.
It
That's
goes-
all more you gotta do. That's what I'd like to see.
Well, yeah, you know what you're talking about, I don't.
I mean,
So, I mean,
does enough setting up the meeting, I
Right.
think if all we gotta do is set up the meeting and it takes off.
that's my comment, I think we've sort of got that. Okay, any other commission comments today?
Well, last week we talked a little bit about having an employee appreciation day. I brought up a little blurb about maybe thank a cough week or something. I don't know how you guys actually, but if we could move forward on one or both of those, I'd rather have it sooner than later. You get in July and August and it's so hot, then nobody wants to go outside, and we're out. I think we as a commission could probably handle cooking hamburgers and stuff like that ourselves. So if we could at least preliminarily
Yeah.
set a date or two, or
Next month is hot. so.
Yeah, I mean,
We're already there.
Is the 24th the holiday or is it 31st holiday in it?
They're both
31st.
holidays, aren't they? Of some sort?
The 31st is the
Big
Memorial
one.
Day.
Memorial
What's
Day.
24th?
Nothing that we celebrate as far as the day
Some
off.
Canadian holidays
It's, it's Victoria Day. It's
Canadian
holiday.
holiday.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. that's-
We observe
Certainly
that.
nothing to do with those Canadians.
That's a staple around here.
Yeah, it's
You know, just for last time when we did something, it was, I fixed them for noon, but the meeting was over with it, and everything. This time, we could do it, and our meeting can still move our meeting back a little bit, because we're here in the afternoon anyway. And so, yeah, that's a possibility, or was you thinking maybe something different than that? Yeah.
I don't know, what's the commission interested in doing?
I'm
I'm open, I just think we should do something.
How
Yeah.
full is,
Well, what do you do about the road and bridge people in the crowd?
Well, we invite them and they come.
They're invited. You always have that issue.
Okay.
Yes.
And lose 4 hours of labor.
But maybe Dave, maybe you'd be willing to drive around too.
Yeah.
deliver the birds and.
Find out where they're at today.
Bertie?
We'll just get on the blades and work the roads for them and let them come in.
That's gonna work out really well.
You don't think?
I don't want that job.
No.
Well, unless you wanna wait and do it in the fall too, that's fine. It makes no difference to me.
But it,
I just think it was done once and we should have continued.
yeah.
September would probably be nice, I mean, after the
Yeah,
summer.
we can do it then.
Yeah, that's fine.
You know, it does, once you
Let's
get
work
into
on
June,
something
then
for the late
Yeah, I mean,
fall, that way we'll get
people
prepared
start
and
taking
everything.
vacations and stuff.
And,
Maybe fall's better.
September?
Yeah, first September.
What about honor our police week? Is there any interest in that?
In there a week. We should be
There's some-
highlighting.
I'll have to look I can look it up.
There
I
is
think there is a
something, yeah.
week somewhere.
Is there? It'd be good to do that
Should be able to
because
Google that, 3 seconds.
it's not I don't know. It's not an easy job nowadays.
Brad's doing it already.
Police
Hey.
recognition week.
See, there you go. People go ahead and
According
use
to
that.
Positive Promotions,
May 9th
celebrate
to the
National
15th.
Police Week, May 9 to 15, 2021.
Right now.
Show your appreciation to all who protect and serve.
So that's next week.
Oh, wow.
We need to make that resolution now.
Shit,
Just have a feeling, huh? We haven't adjourned yet.
Can we pass
Yeah.
some type of resolution?
Yeah,
Proclamation.
Yeah,
Proclamation, or not a
Yeah.
resolution? And then, I don't know, we put it on our website anyway.
May 9th through the what?
15th.
15th.
That week. All next week.
Kent, make a motion to do a proclamation.
I'll make a motion that we do a proclamation honoring our police, the week of the, what did they say?
9th to the 15th.
9th through the 15th, yeah, we'll go ahead and include Sunday.
All Marion County law enforcement.
All Marion County law
We
enforcement.
have a second by Jonah.
Appreciate that.
Not just the- It has been a motion made to support our all Marion County local law enforcement agencies from
City to county.
May 9th through May 15th. And second by Jonah. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. I didn't know it was that quick. Cool. Now if we think of something that we could do for that, I don't know.
We can always do something. It doesn't have to be a Monday
No, don't have to be.
that week. We could just go ahead, instead of putting it off to September, we could just throw something.
How about if you, there's two different things here. How about if you
if
throw
we-
something just for the law enforcement on Friday the 14th or something?
Well,
Invite all the.
we could certainly at least provide them with rolls and stuff.
Well, that's cool too. That's cool. That's cool.
That's
a
a little
job
messed up,
description,
Brad. It's a little messed up.
I'll have my wife make rolls.
She'll have a response for that later.
Yeah.
Okay, but
For what day, the 14th?
the 14th, yeah.
How many dozen?
But that's what I was gonna say. You got
Are
one,
you
two,
doing
three,
the
four,
cities or just?
4 or 5 full-time.
Oh, just sugar rolls.
All law enforcement in Marion County.
Oh, how?
make it-
Well, you can still do your proclamation
Yeah.
and get that publicized, but if you wanna do something specific for your sheriff's department, you could do a treat
Yeah.
for them if you
Yeah.
wanted to.
That would be good.
Maybe the cities will see that and jump on
I
board.
think there's probably a lot of groups that are already do things for law enforcement during that week.
And I've taken cinnamon rolls down to the jail and they really like that.
Yeah.
They can go dig on them whenever they want to, so something like that could be brought in that they could eat on
Yep.
during the day, rather, maybe better than saying we're gonna bring hamburgers and chips at noon when they can't get,
Right.
they don't have time.
Right. I like that idea too. That's cool. And that takes care of the law enforcement and the people that support them over there too. So I believe everything should be delivered over there to the,
I mean, we
over
got
there on the 14th.
people in Marion and people in Florence that make rolls that I know of.
I was just volunteering,
Yeah.
we can buy them too.
Yeah.
It's whatever the commission
Somebody
wants.
make a motion.
If you wanna use one of the local businesses to make it,
Yeah.
that's fine. We do that.
Yeah. What, you gonna be gone next week?
Oh, yeah, I'll be back.
Well, there's nothing to do, huh?
Well, you got a bakery, you said you got a bakery in Marion and one in Florence.
Yeah.
You don't wanna cut either one out, so you need to buy them from both.
I'll split it.
Is there one in Hillsborough?
No.
Okay, well, just check it.
Oh, yeah, there is.
There is one now, isn't there? Yeah.
Right on Main Street, is that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the coffee shop.
Coffee shop is one.
Which one?
With Tim
Oh, yeah,
Marcus.
yeah.
Tim Marcus.
They
Yeah,
make
so-
them there?
Okay,
That-
so we
they
need
make some amazing
at least
Pop-Tarts.
3 dozen.
I would say just a few more, Kent. Maybe 2 dozen from each one. Cause you got your dispatch, you got
Okay,
other that stuff, so.
I'll make a motion that we buy rolls from the Rhubarb Market, the Florence Bakery, and what's this called?
CB.
CB Bakery.
CB
Bakery.
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 Yeah,
Second.
2 dozen from each
yes, 2 dozen from each.
for the sheriff's department.
Yeah, for May the 14th? Or 13th.
Well, if we can have them there on the 14th, I guess, that'd be great.
Yep.
Second.
Second by, have a motion by Kent to buy 2 dozen from all 3 bakeries that we know of in Marion County.
I'm gonna leave somebody out.
Yeah, we're gonna get in trouble.
At least we got different communities.
And Florence,
Good morning.
Marion,
Oh,
and Hillsborough to start with.
Sam.
And that's second by Jonah. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do we need to then go pick all these up? Does that fall
Somebody's
to
gonna
my
have to pick them
staff,
up.
or do you guys,
I can
Commission will take care of it. I can grab from her.
okay. I mean, we can order them, but if somebody can pick them up, that'd be great.
Right, right.
I can work on that.
Okay.
We can double check Monday.
Okay.
The 10th, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can pick up Lawrence's and bring them in. Just, Dave, are you gonna take charge of this again like you usually do?
I can.
Okay, I'm gonna appoint Dave to be in charge of assigning us who picks up the cinnamon rolls.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Jonah. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
I got a feeling Kent's wife is gonna be pregnant or something.